Rise with a pretty nice background coming up in a few minutes.
Developers let their 3-year-old son finish off the rest of the game. They just ran out of ideas and they looked at a coloring book and they're like, we got it. That's brilliant, Johnson.
We are doing the good ending, so we are saving Kid. So we get to see that.
I'm just getting to the Princess Peach room. It's kind of nice that your characters like appear and disappear in the mirror depending on when you come here. You can come to a lot of these places a lot earlier. It just leads to like a lore dump.
Mm-hmm.
So I did just die to a griffin.
Oh, nice.
No.
Perfect.
How long ago did you save?
Luckily I saved before I going down the stairs into the piranha room.
Done. It's still.
It wasn't too far away. There's just a lot. It
still sucks.
Yeah.
Yeah, griffins can be really dangerous because they can hit like 80 damage in a fight. Like you have 120 is your max. After the catfire, you're like at 110 or 100. They can take 80 or in a fight. That's like all your HP. So. Yeah.
They definitely did good balancing. A lot of the enemies aren't very much of a risk. They'll maybe do 20, 40 in a battle. The griffins just throw everything out the window.
Yeah.
They come at you hard.
But like when I first got asked to, if I wanted to learn the game, I was like, it's like a book. I'm like, it's an hour of mashing. It should be fun. And then I realized I could die, and I was like, all right, this is personal now. So I was like, what's the point? And then it's like random encounters. The random encounters really like keep you on your toes.
Yeah.
Because there's definitely been a couple of times where I've gotten to the demon circle with like 30 hit points and I've been like, please don't die to Lynx. Please don't die to Lynx.
Mm-hmm. I mean, if we didn't have random encounters, this wouldn't be a nice speedrun.
Yeah.
It would be about how fast you can select each text box. The random encounters, you actually have to adapt. Heal at certain points, take extra heals, do this, do that, save and reload, or whatever.
I always like how they made Lynx look like Jafar from Aladdin. I don't know why, but that's the first thing my mind goes to. Where it's like, Iago!
He does look like Jafar.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, Jafar and Princess Peach. Together.
I'm just heading back. I'm heading to the clock tower now, as we were talking about earlier. The stone face one actually has a lot of good options. If you give the face the raisins, I think it's a 20 hit point heal.
Yeah. No, 10 point heal. But you should pick the raisins.
I was actually going to.
Nice.
Just because if that griffin comes back, I only have 50 HP, so...
Yep, so if you check my screen, you can see, like, it's revealed that Kid is carrying the Chrono Trigger. And it casts a reaction with the Frozen Flame. And it's, that Luca gave it to her, basically. That's the connection it has with Chrono Trigger, since Kid was an orphan in Luca's orphanage.
So you can die in this game.
Yeah.
It's what makes it an amazing speedrun. You just missed Riggs dying to a random encounter just maybe a minute or so ago.
Yep.
If it was, like as Jerry was saying just earlier, if it was just running through the options and going on autopilot, it wouldn't be nearly as enjoyable of a speedrun, in a sense. Like, the random encounters definitely keep you on your toes. And it spices it up where it's not like you're just seeing you can mash a quarter of a second better. It's kind of just like you're going through the whole game for an hour and you're just like, please no encounters, please no encounters, please no encounters.
Mm-hmm.
And then you get a griffin and die.
Yeah.
going to be making a lot more safety saves now, to say the least.
Poltergeist.
Ooh.
That's one of
Oh,
the
never
ones.
mind, skeleton.
Oh,
I know nothing.
You got the white mask and you think it's a poltergeist. Yeah.
I always think that for like
Mhm.
months. Every time I see white mass, it's like, ooh, poltergeist. And it's like, how do you get a skeleton out of this?
Yeah.
You failed, game.
Skeleton. I'm
I
getting
think the-
Dyne RNG on this run.
Yeah.
You're welcome.
Thank you, coach. Thank you.
So Link says something in the final battle about when the frozen flame is combined with a chrono trigger, it creates its own dimension. I wish I had more to elaborate on that. I just felt it really important to say at the moment. What's the rough ETA? About 75 minutes.
I'm like 5 minutes away right now. If you check my screen, you're gonna see what we were talking about a little bit ago. Just wait for the change of the background and analyze it. It's fantastic.
It's a beautiful scene. It is beautiful.
Wait for it, wait for it. There you go. There's the flying dinosaurs with the earth, the Chrono Cross beach, the mountains, the jungle, the planets. Fantastic. It's so fun.
Don't worry about the questions. A lot of this is just mashing through the text until the game allows you to select something. It's not as mentally taxing as something like Chrono Cross or Chrono Trigger.
Yeah. Oh yeah, for sure. That's always one of the fun parts also of, when we raise this, we're always talking with each other and talking with chat. That's what makes it fun.
Big thing. Oh, sorry, Jared. Go ahead.
I was just gonna say that there's really no like extreme execution like Chrono Trigger where you need to block everything out, or Chrono Cross with some of its bosses as well. This is more like a relaxed run. Go ahead, Dyne.
I know the biggest issue for me, like during the races, is I use the mouse cursor on my notes to tell me where I am. But like sometimes when you're talking, you just mindlessly mashing. I think the worst is like when you space out for too long, and you end up picking up a bunch of wrong options, and you're looking for a left window, and all of a sudden you're at a store or at the stairs, and you're just like,
What did I do?
yep, where am I now?
Big yikes. Oh my goodness. This is the most encounters I have had in a run ever.
Damn.
It really
That
does
sucks.
make you appreciate the good runs, because if you get like those 1 or 2 encounter runs, like you feel like you progress through the story like a lot quicker, which is kind of dumb to say, but like I'm always amazed like on the 3 or 4 encounter runs I get, where it's like just how fast you're flying through the notes, but then when you get the encounters, it just seems to put everything at a halt.
Yep.
Ah, finally, Esmeld, heal me.
Give me that Himalayan chimpanzee tea.
Ah,
Ooh, Mr. Goblin.
Mr. Goblin.
So the text before the battles, I don't think we've. Oh, never mind. It's a skeleton. I'm an idiot. Ignore me. So, like, the text before battles will give you an indication of what the battle is. I'm just an idiot, and I still haven't learned it. So, like, there's different battle layouts for each of the different intros. So, like, usually some people have that on a different, like, notepad document and have it open beside the notes. Because getting through the battles the faster, like, even a difference between, like, a 3-input and a 4-input fights still quite a bit of a time save, because some of the options do have very lengthy text dialogues they lead to.
Yeah.
Jerry's pretty much at the finish line. We end the timing on Disney World. It's basically just after you've done with Jafar or Lynx.
Yeah, Disney World.
A random castle shows up, and it's kind of like, congratulations, you're done. And then you have the option to go through the New Game Plus options if you want to.
Yep. So basically, somebody interrupts your meeting with Lynx, and you all leave your separate paths.
GG's, Jerry.
Yep. Thank you.
GG, good sir.
Thank you. That was 102 and then something, so that's pretty good. Oh, stream delay. Yeah.
That's really good.
Always lucky.
Always lucky.
I told you the saving strat works. You guys should try it out.
I don't think it's just the saving. I think it's the game hates us. Or
I
you
skipped-
have a modified ROM on the emulator, whatever comes
I
first.
skipped 5 encounters by saving, so I'm just gonna say that. And I have the same ROM you gave me.
So look, don't shoot holes in my story right now, please. just let it fly. I'm just talking to Radius the second time. So with the sword, he kind of just wakes up from his little, his own little dream world, and he allows us. Then he gets up, leaves jail, and we're like, all right, job complete. And the ballroom is the last place to save. You have to save before you get into the ballroom, because there's no chance to open up the save menu past that, and it is quite a time loss, even if you did it around this area.
Hello.
Hello, Railcoon. How are you, good sir?
I'm doing pretty well today. I've got a fine corporate L mage joining me today to help with Chrono Cross, and as you can see,
beautiful.
Handy has started off. We got about a 4-minute prologue here, so we don't need to step over the Radical Dreamers commentary too much. Sort of a dream sequence. This was basically the demo for the game, so they integrated it as a prologue to the start of the game, just to give you a feel for how the game is going to play. But hopefully the rest of your Radical Dreamers race goes well.
I don't know about rigs, but I'm running out of stuff to say, so you can fill up the airspace anytime there's a little bit of
Feel
silence.
free.
There's
We've
not.
basically gone over everything.
Yeah,
Right.
we've gone over pretty much
Let's
everything.
see
we need
if Handy saves 59 frames. I've been working on a task for this, and I found a really silly thing that if you hold slightly upright going into this cutscene, for no reason at all, even though Surge has to walk a longer distance, he walks faster if you hold upright, and you save just under a second. I've been finding a lot of those types of discoveries with Chrono Cross as going through and working on the tasks. So it'll be fun to see how much time we can shave off just from those little discoveries. No, Andy doesn't go for it. We'll probably see Andy and Closetowar do it.
Yeah, there's a lot of little time saves regarding movement throughout the whole run, so hopefully we see all the good ones.
As opposed to some other PlayStation 1 RPGs, Chrono Cross is full analog, as in there are every individual digital angle on the analog stick gives you slightly different movement. So that means that especially with the enemy dodges that are coming up, some of them are very close and some of them can be very precise and will take a good bit of practice because you're not dealing with just some of the other PlayStation RPGs where it's going to be, just mimicking a D-pad 8-way movement. You've got very fine control over how Surge is moving in the overworld.
Absolutely.
So we're moving past the prologue. Surge is waking up. We are in a archipelago of islands called the El Nido Triangle. Chrono Cross is taking place, story-wise, not as a direct continuation of Chrono Trigger because of some crazy time stuff that happened, alternate timelines. This is essentially one of the sages, the Sage of Time, after Lavos was defeated, created a research facility called Chronopolis, trying to, figure out what's going on and see if the timeline can be fixed after Lavos kind of messed with it. Stuff happened, Chronopolis got thrown backwards in time, and that created a new timeline. So this is a result of Lavos being defeated, because Chronopolis happened after Lavos was defeated. But once Chronopolis was thrown backwards in time, it created a new timeline, and that's where we are right now. So it's after Lavos was defeated, but not directly story continuation.
Right. I think the story is that Balthazar wanted to save Princess Shala, and then everything else is a result of that. So. Because
Princess Shala got sucked into a vortex when the Mammon machine was stabbed with a red knife, and that's a little bit of the story in Radical Dreamers, and it's worth talking about that as well. Radical Dreamers was sort of a launching point for Chrono Cross. Radical Dreamers was more of a direct continuation from Chrono Trigger. Magil is very overtly Guile looking for Shala in Radical Dreamers, and that storyline was kind of nixed. He was renamed to Guile instead of Magile in Chrono Cross. And you will still see a bunch of story threads from Radical Dreamers and Chrono Cross, but they've mostly been changed and adapted for the bigger, more fleshed out story that is Chrono Cross.
We see Handy doing some menuing. He purchased 2 fireballs, which he'll make use of almost immediately. But also setting his movement speed to run, because walking is very slow in this game. But also some battle menuing, just to make things a lot easier for all the runners.
Yeah, it's very important that you set the accuracy selection to manual for this run. As we get into the first battle, we'll talk a little bit about how combat works in this game. Everyone starts off with 7 stamina. Using attacks or elements, defending, etc. will use or generate stamina, but it will also use AP. If you're using attacks, the amount of stamina you use is based on the weak, medium, or strong hit, 1, 2, or 3, and you will also use the amount of AP correlating to the amount of stamina that you use. Defending will generate 1 stamina, but use 1 AP. And using an element, which is the important one, will use 7 stamina, can throw you negative, but still only use 1 AP. And turn-based system, there are no ATBs to worry about like in Chrono Trigger, but every enemy in the background has a value that is their ATB. When that number hits 0, they will take the next turn. They will interrupt what you're doing. Unless you are attacking, you can delay them taking their turn by, if you watch on the very left when they're selecting their attacks, these little bars will show up displaying whether or not they are doing the weak, medium, or strong hits. And if the enemy is just hitting 0 ATB and you mash through a couple extra attacks, you can delay their turn coming up, and that's used to manipulate some of the bosses later on. Try and make it so that they get less turns, or you can skip a certain turn that you don't want to see.
Yes, it's very important. A lot of fights are not possible with how we're set up for the speedrun, but without them, we'd struggle quite a bit.
Yeah, and when Handy gets going here, you can see we're using a fireball here, and if you watch in the top left, there's an element grid. Every time you use an element, it will push the innermost circle outwards and fill it with the color of element you just used. And what that does is every color in that circle will strengthen that color and weaken its opposite color. And the most effective is the innermost circle that has the most effect on that. But when you stack it, so there's 2 or 3 rings, then it builds even more. So having a field that has 2 or 3 red will make red elements very strong. And we're going to use that on the first boss coming up very shortly. Hopefully, if the ATB lines up well, they will not get a turn, and we can just blast it away. So the same thing here that we just used on the last one. Going to kill this second Komodo pup with a fireball. It will send us into the negative stamina, and negative stamina is an interesting thing because what negative stamina will do is it will advance the AP, and then you will get more stamina back than the amount of ATB that advances if every one of your characters is in negative stamina. Call that a stamina refresh. So Surge got a full stamina refresh. Missed 2 of the medium hits though, so this is not going to kill. But thankfully this boss is not dangerous. Her attacks are just slow, so it's just going to waste a few seconds.
Yeah, the Mama Komodo is very, very kind.
She only goes for the 2 attacks, which is a rather nice pattern, except then she interrupts with the Aqua Beam. Never mind. ATB roll wasn't super kind, but Handy will be able to finish her off here. Talking about accuracy and selecting which attacks to use in Chrono Cross, the weak attacks are by default very accurate, don't do much damage. The medium attacks are in the middle, but the strong attacks, which is very important, are the only ones that can crit. And that will be coming into play very clearly later in the game. But there will be a few times where the runners will be fishing for a crit on a few of the bosses, just because if you can get a crit, you can gain some nice time saves, but usually not required, just if they're trying to get a little bit fancy. So we're hitting our first real story section where Surge is going to meet up with his not really official girlfriend. She wants to be the official girlfriend, but Surge is a little bit dense. He's not picking up the hints that she's putting down. And he's going to get sucked into another world, because the big theme of Chrono Cross is, as Terry Pratchett called it, the trousers of time. Every time a big choice or turning point in someone's life happens, the difference between you living and dying or making a huge life decision, it creates an alternate timeline between the 2 choices. And Surge is about to get sucked off into a alternate timeline where when he was a kid, he died. So he's going to a world where no Surge exists, and that's going to be very important for the story coming up. How you 2 doing over there with Radical Dreamers?
Going good. I'm just at my Jafar fight. Getting ready to go to the auto tech section, and then Andy will be starting Chrono Cross pretty soon. Probably about another 3 minutes or so.
My run is going pretty well now that I've stopped getting into encounters. There was a minute there where I ran into 5 in a row. Just move one room, get an encounter, move another room, get an encounter. It just takes up a lot of time. But now I'm encounterless so far.
Good to hear.
It's
So
actually been... sorry, go ahead, real quick.
I was just going to say, one of the nice things about Chrono Cross is these sections right here, where you're waiting on long text and then you get the cutscene. These are pretty infrequent. If you're interested in picking up Chrono Cross, it is a bit of a long run, but it winds up being a really nice distribution between enemy dodges, boss fights, and not huge sections of tech smashing. It's a pretty high action run, and has a lot of backup strats and adapting on the fly, if that's a thing you like, because of the way the stamina and accuracy system works. A lot of the routes for this game and boss notes are, here is the ideal, but if you miss here, here's your backups, things you can change into doing to recover if things start to go bad. And the really, really nice bonus about this game is you can run away from every battle. At the bottom, there's a runaway option that is not random. You will instantly leave the battle. You can heal in the menu after leaving. A few bosses will not let you menu after you run away, but that just means that you run away, which will revive all your characters, enter the battle, and then you run away again, and you use that post-battle menu to heal everybody up, and then you can just go right back into that boss. So
yeah, Chrono Cross is very beginner-friendly for speedrunning. So there's not a lot to worry about, and the nice thing is that as it goes on, it gets a little more difficult. So you're not burdened with a lot of difficult tricks and whatnot. So you can just pick it up and go.
Yeah, there's a couple minor time saves, but they're not big. For the most part, we have found very little for breaks in this game. It's been pretty resistant to, huge sequence breaks. There's a couple we'll talk about later on for, pretty minor time saves. Some of them are difficult, but they're such small time saves that if when you're learning you choose not to do them, you're not really going to be at a huge disadvantage.
Right.
I didn't quite see if Handy got the feather, but he did not stop to detour it to pick it up, so I assume he did. One of the big things you're looking for in this first area is you're looking for a 10% drop so that we can craft some items coming up that will make the first proper dungeon a little bit easier. So we'll see how the other runners do on that. There is a very easy backup when you're coming out of the beach. You just jump down a small path, you pick up a chest. There's a feather right there. So it's not a big deal if you miss it, but it's about, I think, 10-15 second detour.
Yeah,
if you don't wind up getting
15 seconds. Not that bad.
So now Serge has come back to Arni village, and he's talking to Lena, and he's very confused because she doesn't know who he is. And of course, now Lena is explaining after we made a little bit of a fool of herself, saying, "Hey, I'm Serge. What are you talking about?" And she's saying, "What? No, he died. Don't say things like that. That's not nice." And then she's going to tell us to go visit his grave, and we're going to head up there. And that's another good point for a backup because we also wanted some humors in the first area. If we didn't find enough beach bums, we're going to be using that for the weapon crafting system in Chrono Cross. Do you want to go over how weapon crafting works in this game? Because it's very different from just buying weapons in Chrono Trigger.
Sure. So in this game, you take yourself to the blacksmith, and you use your existing weapon along with materials you find from drops from enemies, or sometimes on the overworld. And then with money and the right materials, you can upgrade your weapons and armor and create accessories. It's really nice. And the nice thing about the run is we're going to take advantage of that and get some top tier items a little earlier than expected from like a casual playthrough.
The important part for that is the disassemble feature. You can take weapons and armor and accessories and disassemble them back into their parts. You have to pay money to do it. And we're going to get some iron before we're supposed to. Handy went to go get a beach bum. Looked like he didn't have enough humor, but he got a rare formation that only has one beach bum. Hopefully he didn't need more than one humor, otherwise he's going to have to take another fight. There is a backup humor you can get later on in a chest that, if you do it right, does not actually waste any time. But it looks like we're fine. That will be enough for Handy to keep going, thankfully.
It looks like he got one.
Mm-hmm.
And if he does have to fight another encounter for a humor, he has a chance of getting a mini star, which we could talk about later. But short, it's a little level up that has a chance of getting strength, HP, magic, whatnot. But depends on what your party is currently. So in this case, it's just Surge. But eventually, we'll have other party members that could take advantage of mini stars. So
yeah, we should talk about leveling up and stat gains now that you mention it. We're going to take a little bit. These people have come. They've been told that we're here, that a ghost would be here, and that they need to bring us back. But level ups are random stats gained every level, but they're set in the memory. So after every time you level up, the game chooses what your next level up stats are going to be, and it just keeps them there. And those stats are determine what you're going to get on those mini stars. Mini stars only affect the characters you have in your party, like Corporate was saying. But a level up levels up everybody in the game at the same time, even people who are not in your party. So whenever you get a character to join your party, or if you haven't been using a character for a while, you put them back in your party, they'll still be the same character. But they may be missing a few stats if you haven't had them for a while because they haven't been getting those mini star stat gains. So this is Kid. She has appeared to help us out. She's a member of a famous group of thieves called the Radical Dreamers. We don't really learn too much about them in this story, just hear that they've got a pretty big reputation, and that's really all you hear about that particular aspect of tying into the previous game. So we've got our favorite tutorial enemies, Salt and Pepper. Which Salt and Pepper fight is your favorite, Corporate?
Well, it's got to be on the way to Fort Dragonia.
Yeah, it's a fun one. We'll have to ask chat to spam W's along with us when we get there. But whenever you see Salt and Pepper, except for one occasion coming up later, Their purpose is to sort of tutorialize some combat mechanics for you. They're, in this one, explaining how elements work and how using elements or a character that is the opposite element of your enemy will be more effective, because the colors of the elements are not just on the magic elements that you use, but every character has their innate color, and their physical attacks also have that color associated with it. So you take Kid is a red elemental character. She attacks a blue character, she will do more damage. If she attacks a red elemental character, she'll do slightly less damage, that sort of thing.
It looks like Handy had a little rough start, but thankfully this fight is not too punishing. Very unlikely to wipe, but I've come close once.
Really?
Yeah.
Just a lot of misses?
Yes, a lot of misses.
There's two variants you can do of this fight. There's one very safe one where you don't take many risks on using the strong attacks. We usually call them 1, 2, or 3. So if you hear us talking about how he's going to use a 3 or 1, 2s, that's us just using shorthand for the weak, medium, and strong attacks. And of course, going for the strongs is a little bit faster, going for those 3 attacks. But if you miss, it's gonna hurt because the enemies are gonna get more turns. So this fight isn't really dangerous. You can push your luck by going for 3s, trying to end it a little bit faster. But you'll see Handy has kind of shifted down to just hitting 2s a lot, trying to make up some of the damage he lost before he finishes this off.
In this fight, the drops are somewhat important.
Yes, they
have
are.
a chance to drop something, and bosses, for the most part, are guaranteed to drop items, but we'll see what he gets. I hope it's not a power.
Ooh, he did get a power glove, but he got a vest and a helmet. But
Nice.
power glove is technically a rare drop that can gain you a bunch of time, but it usually winds up being a little bit of a bad luck on runs.
Yep.
A lot of people, I haven't seen many runs that get a power glove end well, let's put it that way.
Yeah, every single run I've had that got a power glove ends poorly. Every single one. So it's a joke in my stream that I just say it's a cursed item.
I'm gonna jump off now. Good luck to the Chrono Cross commentators and the runners, and we'll catch you later.
Thanks for doing the run for us.
Yeah, thank you.
So you see Andy has entered the prologue. Like I said, it's about 4 minutes, just introducing. We'll see if Andy saves approximately 1 second. And right now, Superhandi is on the hardest trick of the game. You need to say no to Kid 3 times. If you let Kid join your party, the run is over.
Yep.
Not even joking. It is so important that you do not let Kid join your party, because if you do, you miss out on being able to recruit Lena. And our entire strategy for the early game is using Lena.
Yeah, Lena is very strong. A very strong blue elemental user for magic. And we're going to make great use of her magic strength. Hopefully. Hopefully we're not too unlucky.
Yeah, there we go. Hardest trick down. Handy has declined Kid 3 times. We're now going to have Lena joining our party. Every single Chrono Cross runner has lost a run to saying yes to Kid on accident, just mashing through the text a little bit too quickly. You run this game, it's going to happen, it feels bad, and then you slow down and you make sure that you say no to her 3 times. It sort of helps you make sure it doesn't happen again in the future.
Yep, I can confirm. That is true.
The bonus of having Lena is we also get Paschal, who is adorable, cute pink little doggo with fluffy ears and 2 tails. And I don't know about you, but whenever I have Paschal in the party, I like to put her in front because that bounce sound she makes as she's running is just too cute.
Womp, womp, womp.
And Paschal is, on paper, a strong character, but we will be kicking her out of the party at our soonest convenience because among all of the stats in this game, there is one called Stamina Recovery. And sadly, this tends to be one of the biggest factors on whether or not a character is good for the speedrun. And Paschal's Stamina Recovery is not good. It means that for every 1 stamina that another party member uses, she gains less than 1 back. Because as you use stamina, your other characters gain approximately the same amount of stamina. Most of the characters in the game are even. That is, for every 1 stamina you use, they get 1 stamina. The other characters get 1 stamina back. But Pashal and a few other of the strength-oriented characters, the ones that are supposed to do very high physical damage, gain less stamina back as a sort of way to balance that out. Some of the faster mage-type characters who do not do lots of physical damage have more than 1 recovery. So that means when they're in the party, you're using attacks, and they will gain like 1.1 stamina, or even in some instances 1.2 back. I think the best is Draggy, which is I think 1.3. But Draggy's a little bit out of the way. We'll not be picking up Draggy, but Draggy is adorable. Best little dragon in the game.
Looks like Handy is elected not to get the magma bomb, which is hidden in that room in the background. The fight coming up generally has 2 strategies. One where you make use of Lena's magic and use magma bomb. The other where it's just Pashul and Surge going back and forth. But
yeah, I mean, if the strength rolls have been good, that's probably a good call because of the power glove.
Yep.
This will be one of the fights where you can save a good amount of time. Saved a little bit of backtracking, and the animation on magma bomb is kind of long. So hopefully we don't get too many misses here. We have tutorial number 2, where we're going to be introduced to turn elements, and these are going to be very important for the run. You cast them on yourself or an enemy, and it gives them an additional color for their innate. So black just got cast onto Surge, which Surge is a white innate. That doesn't cancel him being white. It just means his innate is white and black. And it does some interesting things. It means that if, a white innate character were to attack Surge now, instead of doing greatly reduced damage, they'll just do a little bit more than before, but not as much as if they were attacking a pure black innate character. And there's some interesting things you can do where you can stack 2 innates on top of an enemy. So you can take a red enemy and turn the red enemy, and now they are red, and now they take a lot of damage from blue attacks.
Yep. Yeah, we'll see that later in the run, how that's taken advantage of. Oh, nice, Pashul. Got salt there. But, yeah. Always love using Lena here for getting some stamina. Get some unlucky rolls.
Yeah, and it's also important because we're trying to do most of the damage with Surge and Pashal, but as you watch Surge attack, Pashal gained 1.8 stamina there. So if you just keep going back and forth between Surge and Pashal, you're just not getting enough stamina to keep them attacking indefinitely. Surge sitting at 11 strength. Hopefully that will go up a little bit more as we continue. Talking about strength numbers is going to be very important. I don't know the strength thresholds all that well, because I did the initial route for this game and kind of did a starting point, and a lot of excellent people like Evil Ash, Andy came along later on and really fleshed it out, came with backup strats, learned what strength numbers you want to have at different points, and how to adjust your strategies if you're low on strength, if you're high on strength. I haven't really learned all of that. But it makes me really happy to see people are still running this game and still developing new strats. Because, initially I started working on it because it's just a game I really enjoy.
Absolutely, yeah. This is one of my favorite games from my childhood. So it's a pleasure to work on it. At the very least run it. But it looks like Andy W, he was able to get a humor early. So it looks like he'll be set going forward from the Lizard Rock area.
Ooh, and he just got a feather too. So he should have enough humor where he doesn't have to worry about detouring for an extra humor, at least early on. If you could get one more beach bum, it would be beneficial. But he's at the very least got the minimum requirements that he needs to complete through here, so that he's in a good spot. If we look back to Handy, we've gotten to Terna. This is the big city near us. And surprise, surprise, even though we told Kid we didn't want to join up with her, she's going to show up and be like, nope, I'm coming with you anyway. And we're going to go off to Viper Manor, which is the location in which Radical Dreamers just took place. And this is probably the area that has the most similarities between Radical Dreamers, but it has been fully fleshed out. Things have been changed a little bit. After that section of the game is gone, we're going to be branching off pretty heavily from Radical Dreamers storyline. And you'll see that, that game was mostly used as like a a small chapter of a larger story that is Chrono Cross. So you want to explain how we're going to make Viper Manor considerably easier here in Termina Corporate?
In Termina? Oh, sure. Yeah. So after getting Kid, we're going to check to see what her strength is. It matters a little bit because she's a nice support character. She's got 8, which is nice. But we're going to go to the right and go into the mansion past the smithy. We're going to pick up an item called the Profiteer's Purse. Normally this item, when you equip it, increases your money drop. But we have a better use for it for the run, because a Profiteer's Purse contains iron, which is a tier 3 material for armor and weapons. So we're going to disassemble it and get a hold of some iron, and thanks to the materials we picked up on from the beach bums and the humors and the fangs, I'm going to craft a very strong weapon for this part of the game for Surge and Kid.
Yeah.
We're going to make use of it in Viper Manor.
It's important because it has 2 armor, so we can make 2 really nice armor weapons. That's what we need the feather for, some of this humor. We're going to be using humor a lot. Humor is used frequently in crafting weapons and armor. That's why we kind of wanted to get some early on. It does mean that our money route early on is a little tougher than it might be otherwise, but there's a particular way we can get a lot of money later on and never have to worry about it again. So sacrificing this early on is very, very worth it. To give you an idea of how much we're skipping in terms of like equipment by getting iron weapons now, in Viper Manor near the end, there's a boss fight that drops a very strong elemental attack, and the rare drop is 1 iron.
Yeah.
So going into this entire sequence with 2 iron weapons is going to make it significantly easier. And at this point, we've got 3 options to get into Viper Manor. They all have their own side area. They all have it follow a different path. You can follow Nikki and go in through the back. Sneak in through the swamp. You can follow Guile and you'll sneak up the cliffs. Or we can find Pierre here, who wants to try and join the Dragoons. But we need to find his hero medal. The kid has it. We bring it back. He'll come with us. And we just walk in the front gate. We get 2 fights. They're both pretty quick. And you skip all of the side area and possibilities for random encounters. So this is just the best option. Pierre is not a good character.
Nope.
He's interesting because if you get the hero medal and the full hero sword and armor, he becomes slightly overstated. He becomes like actually a pretty good character, but you have to have that weapon and armor equipped. So it takes away from your ability to, and the medal, of course. So it takes away from your ability to kind of customize his equipment a little bit, especially with having 1 accessory slot locked in. So if you've got the top end accessories in the late game, even though Pierre's stats are very, very good, he does wind up being a little bit behind the others still, since you cannot take off that hero medal, otherwise he becomes horrible again.
Yeah, I like to joke about Pierre because I think he can come with the lowest strength value in the game, which is 2. And I've always found that really satisfying when some of the fights in Viper Manor, if for some reason you have to rely on Pierre, for any reason at all, he gets the finishing blow, like on Link.
Yeah.
It's just so satisfying that he's so weak. But
It's the slap in the face when he finishes a boss with 2 damage.
yes, it's great.
So there is an interesting feature in this game where you can press select and reorder your party. So you'll notice that we have Pierre in front right now, and that's very important because there's an ability coming up that will target the character in the front of your party. And since we just got finished talking about how Pierre is not good and we don't want to rely on him, we're going to put him in front because we'd rather him be greatly weakened than Surge.
Absolutely. Yeah, we're about to see why we put Pierre up front. Pretty great. See, Closetowar is almost wrapping up the dream sequence. It's like he didn't get any bat encounters.
Yeah, the bat encounters in the dream sequence are pretty easy to avoid. Just might have to slow down a few times. It's always unfortunate when the bats troll you pretty hard because they can cost you 15-20 seconds if they decide they're going to get in your way and just stay there. The worst is when one of them swoops down at you and gets stuck in that arch you have to run through and just stays there. Oh my goodness, have you ever had that happen?
Yes. It is not fun to watch. You just watch your time go away.
Mm-hmm. So now we have Salt and Pepper, and they have brought a new friend, Ketchup. With an O at the end, because he's going to chop you. And this is fun because it's an additional tutorial fight with Salt and Pepper that you could miss otherwise. And they're going to teach you about reviving enemies, which is they're going to do it in a rather amusing way. And that means that when Ketchup decides that he's going to attack and kill someone, it's going to be the character in the first position. Hopefully he does not miss, because if he misses, he will keep attacking until he hits. My record is him missing 3 times in a row, just wasting time. I don't know if you've seen worse than that. I hope not.
Oh, he's missed entirely 3 times for me, so we get to see Cure Plus when that happens, but hopefully. Nice. 470. Just a flick of the finger.
So now, it turns out that Salt is a very good sport, and he thinks that, it wouldn't be as good of a lesson if, we let Ketchup do all the work. So he revives Pierre so we can teach you a proper lesson, which makes Pepper a little bit upset. And you see now that Pierre has 11 health. And of course, we don't want to spend the time using a heal element, so that's why we put Pierre in front. If he gets killed here, doesn't really matter, because Surge and Kid, their stamina recovery is good enough, they can go back and forth. And this fight triggers based on Ketchup's health. So we hit a trigger here with this dash and slash. I think we've done enough damage to trigger the next part of the fight. And then we're going to be fighting just Ketchup with a rather amusing animation. And you should just watch this. It's fantastic.
Best attack in the game, in my opinion.
All right, let's hit Pierre for that overkill. Come on.
Hit him. Nice.
Oh!
Deserved.
86 damage overkill. Completely unnecessary. And now we just need to finish off Ketchup. He's at about half health right now. So just give him some nice hits with these iron weapons. Ooh, that was a nice crit there. And that was enough to finish him off. So that's the entire sequence, as opposed to going through the swamp or the cliffs with Guile or Nikki. Just those 2 fights, and it also counts as 2 star levels as well, so gives us a nice little 1 star level, sorry, because the others all have like some little mini boss fight associated. We're going to get this turn yellow behind the gate, because having turn colors is going to be important. We're going to wind up willing to have at least one of each color to use with the turn elements. That one's right there, very small detour, and of course the first opportunity we get to buy them is when our money is rather tight. And depending on how the pirate ship goes, we might have more or less money to spend on those elements. So taking a few seconds to pick that one up is just pretty much always worth it.
Now let's see if Superhandi is going to go for the guard skip. I think he will.
He's been practicing it. It's very difficult skip that lets you skip an entire counter, but it is absolutely frame perfect with a very precise pixel alignment. There's a setup to sort of get yourself in the position to have an attempt at it, but no setup to actually get it consistently.
Right. Luckily, if he does fail it, it only costs around 30 seconds.
Because it's just the time you have to set it up, because if you fail it, it just results in you getting the encounter that you were trying to skip.
Exactly. Gonna feed some dragoons.
Dragons,
and
yeah.
The sequence is always the same number. But depending on how quick you are at feeding them, it can change an iteration of when they're hungry. So, I mean, it doesn't amount to much, but there is a quicker sequence than. Let's see.
Yeah, I'm pulling it up right now.
Looks like he got the slower one.
Did he?
Alright. We only need to feed the dragons once, and our prize is a, what? Was it an elbow pad? No.
Yeah, knee pad, I think. But yeah, we don't really care about that. Later on, we can disassemble it if we're short on some materials, so it's nice. But he also gives us the key to the manor, because, I don't know.
Because we're nice.
He's very trusting, I suppose. So, yeah, he's going to go for the guard skip. So what you have to do is you have to get this other guard chasing you, and then get in behind those guards. Oh, he didn't actually go for it. what you want to do is you get the other guard chasing you, because while that guard is chasing you cannot get into an encounter with the guards in front of the door. But he will give up after a while. And right when the guard gives up, there is a 1-frame window where you can try to interact with the door. And if you get that sound of the interaction with the door, the other guards will aggro, but you won't get the fight. You'll go straight into the manor. But like we said, it wastes about 30 seconds to have the other guard chase you around, and it's very difficult to get. So, especially in a race situation like that, makes sense to just take the fight, have decent stats. You got a power glove. You can kind of just power through this.
I think he's at 13 strength already with the power glove, which is pretty great.
Kid is at 9, which is not fantastic, but it's, it's good enough. Oh, he did go for it. Oh, unfortunate. So he had to waste a little bit of time, because while that guard's chasing you, you cannot go through the door. And this is the next bit of RNG. There's a puzzle here where you have to turn this snake. There is no correct solution at this point. Like, you can't guess the solution blindly, because the solution hasn't been set. No matter what numbers you put in, you will fall through. And then coming up, we will find out what the numbers are. We are hoping for a 1-2. 1-2. That is the lowest realistic combination. We'll put it that way.
Yeah, you can get the legendary 1-1, but don't even hope for it.
The chances are a little bit weighted of getting the 1-1. So it is not just rare, it is extremely rare. And of course, you have to sit and watch the animation of the snake spinning. So the higher numbers on the combination just waste time.
Yeah, thankfully it's about a second for every turn, so it's not that bad if you get a high combination of numbers, but it's nice to see a low combo.
Oh, I looked over at Closetowar right as he also got a feather and some humor at the same time. So all three of our runners got lucky, got themselves a feather, and will not have to detour for that extra chest. One thing to note is that despite Closetowar starting significantly behind the other two, Closetowar is a monster at this game, and very realistic possibility of Closetowar pulling this back and having a very good finish. So we'll see how this goes. Hopefully we'll have an exciting finish for you all. The way that the teams kind of finished out was sort of in order of backwards order of the PBs of the people who are racing Chrono Cross. So good planning on the part of the people who put this all together. So now that we have cleared that guard fight, we're going to take their uniforms, and it's very important that you do not walk through the center of this hallway that Handy is about to walk through. If you stand underneath those lights, enemy will drop down. It's very annoying. It can use confusion. So you have to talk to Glenn here. It sort of starts him moving along, and he will set in motion the events we need to find the combination. But we've got some time before he will make it activate. So we're going to pick up some other stuff along the way. That Dragoon's Honor is a fantastic accessory. Gives +1 to strength, magic, and I think 2 accuracy.
Yep.
Just a good all-around item. We're going to go over here. We're going to pick up the Revive. Great backup item. And then if you time this right as you walk up, he's walking away from the wall, and you get your code. What is it? What is it? Chat, cross your fingers. We want low numbers.
4-4. No, I don't know.
Ooh.
What was it?
Ooh, 8-7.
8-7.
8-7. That's very close to the worst you can get. Oh, unfortunate.
Oh well. He'll be fine. He'll be fine.
So now we're coming up to a password here. They're trying to trick you by, what's the password? And even if you've been talking to everybody, you will not have heard a password to this door. And if you pick the wrong password, you will get a fight. Turns out the answer was silence. So that's a fun little thing. You can stop in here and pick up some items in the back. I think most people pick up at least the armor. You can also pick up the sword if you're a little bit worried about your money, but it's strange because you don't know how your money is doing until you get to the pirate ship after this. So I think most people have stopped picking up the sword. And now we're going to get the Neo End Bulb fight here. It's really important that you equip beforehand. You want to put on that Dragoon's honor, and you want to give Pierre the turn yellow because we've got some sort of chunky green enemies.
Yeah, Pierre has a job to do, and it's very important he execute his job. It's pretty much the only job he has in this whole run. Let's see if he can do it.
One thing to notice is that in fights like this one in particular, when it's a slightly stronger normal enemy instead of a boss, checking the gender of the enemies before you attack is irrelevant. So you might see Handy flip targeting between both of them, because on average the female enemies, the normal enemies, will have slightly less health. A lot of the times people will just attack the right one, but sometimes if you flip back and forth, especially if your strength is a little bit lower, that's more relevant. But since Handy's got pretty good strength, probably not going to bother to check. Just going to wail on the right one and hope that one has the lower health.
Right, Pierre, hit. You did it. Good job, Pierre.
Yeah, there we go. Pierre's one job. I don't think Pierre even does anything useful for the rest of the manor.
No, he's just dodgy, and he's there to revive if somebody gets knocked out. So.
And he's a meat shield for the enemies to target instead of Surge and Kid as well. Mm-hmm. Ooh, excuse me. Sorry about that.
So with this... Oh, go ahead.
Oh, sorry, go ahead.
I was going to say, with the Bush Basher, it puts a green on the field, which means that Surge, who's now yellow, also yellow element, his damage output is going to be a little bit less than it would have been, but it's fine. Like, he's strong enough to take them out.
Those strength ups, oh my goodness. I'm cheating a little bit. So we're up to 14 and 10. Very good stat line to begin with the Dragoon, or the Power Glove. So we're going to find another accessory coming up here. This is my favorite little tidbit, is that if you go to GameFAQs.com, the highest rated facts will all tell you that you cannot pick this up here and you have to come back later on. But turns out you just have to keep trying. You try to open this chest and Karsh yells at you. You have to try to open it 20 times. And then he will give in and let you have it. And all of the guides that I have found all say that you cannot do this. None of them mention that 20 times will let you get it. I think it's because what a lot of other games from this era, once an NPC starts counting like this, it's just sort of code for no, you're not allowed to open this. And the devs would do it for fun, just to track how many times you're opening it. And sometimes you'd get an Easter egg, but they still wouldn't let you get the thing. So given a lot of the other games that came out at the time, seeing Karsh starting to count like that, it was a pretty reasonable assumption that you're not allowed to open the chest.
Right. They see Closetowar, he made the detour for the feather, so either he didn't get a drop, or for some reason he might have forgotten that he had it.
I thought I saw the drop on his screen, but I was watching the low quality window. I didn't have
it's hard to see that.
Yeah,
anyway.
I've got the other streams open on the side, but they're a bit ahead, which is why I cheated earlier on Andy's stat ups there. But the Dragoon's Gauntlet is just fantastic for this point in the game. It's +3 power. And it basically equates to a little bit more than 3 strength, based on the way the damage formula gets used. So we're at 14 strength with +5 power between the Power Glove, the Dragoon Gauntlet, and the Dragoon's Honor. So that means that Surge is hitting like an absolute Mack truck right now.
Yeah, he's really powerful. But power can be troublesome in this run sometimes. We're about to come up against Marcy, and you can do a little bit too much damage to her at the start, and it can get a little tough, the fight, but they're experienced, they'll know how to handle it, so I'm not worried about any mishaps. Yeah,
we're actually trying to manage her health a little bit, because when she gets down into low health, she gains access to a more powerful move, and we don't want her to use that on Kid. It's not so much that we're scared of dying to her, but if she takes out Kid, then Kid misses some stats, and Kid's still going to be useful in the Lynx fight coming up, especially since her strength isn't that great in this run. She's about average, maybe slightly above average, but it also means that we'll have to menu to heal her up at some point. before we fight the last encounter of this area. So we're running into the Prophet here, and he's explaining the Trousers of Time I was talking about before, about how when Surge was almost killed by a Panther Demon as a child in his world, it created an alternate timeline where between the two outcomes of him dying and him living. So in that location, which was the beach where he was attacked, it created a sort of weak point between these two timelines where the walls are a little bit weaker, and Surge is able to pass between the two timelines under the right conditions in that spot where the two timelines fragmented. So that's how Surge wound up in this alternate reality where everybody thinks he's dead. And he's, even though he knows all of this, he's still not quite sure how Surge can go home. And that's sort of our short-term goal, is that Kid is saying, we should go after Lynx because the Frozen Flame is a big, powerful thing she's after, but also it will probably be able to send Surge home, hopefully. But Marcy, this character on the side, who's this aggressive child who we've been underestimating, gets revealed that she is one of the Devas, which is the 4 highest ranking Dragoons in this military force, and she wants to fight.
She's gonna kick some shins.
Ooh. That crit right off the bat. That's nice, but it also means that Handy's gonna have to be careful here because she got a pretty good AP roll. She's using that Krat's Cradle pretty early. So don't want to push her too hard because we want her to get her second turn before she's in critical HP.
Okay, nice.
Oh,
Pierre.
Oh, nope. There we go. So she's going to do the ice blasts here. It's painful. Pierre tanks it though. So, oh, we're ahead again. I'm watching the wrong screen. I'm sorry. It's fine though. It's just Pierre.
Yeah, no worries about Pierre. Let's see.
If she uses that ice blast on Kid, it can be bad though. So we want to see the ice blast drop. Cross your fingers, ice blast. Do not want to see iron. Got the ice blast. Good.
Nice.
There is a backup for getting the iron instead of the ice blast there, but it's just, you bleed time through all of Fort Dragonia. It is not fun.
I think I saw +2 on Surge.
Did you?
Yeah, so I think he's at 16 now, which is
That's
pretty outstanding.
That's a low chance because the way the setups work is there's sort of a table of what your maximum stats could be and what your stats are at this current point. And the closer you are to your maximum stat, the lower chance you have of gaining an upgrade in that stat. And if you're high enough, close enough to your maximum stat, you cannot gain +2. So getting a +2 there means that he was just far enough below the maximum that a +2 was possible, but it's probably around a 1 or 2% chance to get that +2 if that is what happened. I didn't see, so we'll have to wait until after this guard fight we can take a peek at Surge's strength and confirm it. I want to take a look over at Andy, who's fighting the guards. I want to see how he's doing on stats. Because Harley is here, she's talking. She likes to flirt with Surge. We'll learn more about her later on.
I think I saw Kid was at 9 strength, but I missed what Surge is at.
Mm-hmm. Right.
Oh,
Andy should be finishing up this battle pretty shortly while Handy goes and presses the switch. This switch is very tricky. You have to stay in a very small spot. It's very easy to wiggle in place and miss the switch several times. Guards are not very happy that you almost crushed them with Staircase, so they come in and charge you. Ooh, Andy's got 10 strength after the guard fight. So he's a little bit lower than he'd like to be. I also noticed that he named Surge Flea.
Nice. To represent. Yeah, I think I saw Closetowar after the Karsh Salt and Pepper fight get a +2 strength. So I think he's at 12.
The one thing you don't want to see on this guard fight is you do not want to see 5 guards. It's a rare formation, but it can happen. Just waste a bunch of time. So we'll see here what Handy has on strength. And that is 16 strength, so he did get a +2. Surge is an absolute monster right now. This is actually kind of tricky because we do want to do some health manipulation on this Lynx fight coming up to try and keep him from using the Nostrum. It's a very powerful healing consumable that will heal him for 200. So the whole routing of this fight is to prevent him from using the Nostrum, but if you hit him too hard, too early, he'll just use it. So if we get an unlucky crit, we might get the healing anyway.
Yeah, one thing I saw was
saying in chat. Sorry, go ahead.
No, go ahead. You go ahead.
So what's Closetowar saying in chat? I'm not.
He's at 11 strength. Okay.
Oh, they're talking about how you cannot name Surge Chrono in chat. The game doesn't actually let you. Okay.
Gotcha. I was going to say I saw Pierre at 1 HP, so I guess he got knocked out earlier. Having to heal your teammates after a battle costs quite a bit of time because of the menu. Opening up the menu can take several seconds and closing it. So whenever you get the chance, you want to use consumables or the default heal option to heal up your party and hope that during fights you don't get knocked out. So Handy was able to make use of healing with consumables with the guard fight, but here's Lynx. Oof. One miss, one hit, that's okay.
Yeah, that's pretty good. I don't think we want to see all of those hit right off the bat because, again, if we get a couple crits early on, Lynx could just use a Nostrum before we can prevent Lynx from using it. And the way we're going to do this, we're going to use Kid to steal, which will cause him to counterattack with, I think it's Hell Soul. And we're looking for, or no, it's Imbecile, sorry, yeah. And we're looking for the magic ring. There is a rare steal we don't want to see, but we do get the magic ring, so we're good. And then before Lynx gets into critical HP, we want to use an element from Surge. We're going to use his white elemental attack, because that will force a counter attack from Lynx, and he will use his turn instead of using his healing, and then we try to finish him off before he gets another turn.
I saw Andy, he got a magic ring, a rare drop from Ketchup, but he's still stuck at 10 strength.
Oh, he got the magic ring from that fight? Okay, interesting. That's a pretty low chance. That can help a lot in Fort Dragonia. Given the choice between that one and the Skyjin ring, you would prefer the Skyjin ring, because that's very nice. Strength and magic scaling are very different. Everybody's maximum magic is lower than their maximum strength. And that means every point is more valuable. So getting those +1, +2 magic items are very, very nice. And another strength up for Handy. Oh my goodness.
Man. He's on his way.
17 strength at the end of Fort Dragonia. Fantastic.
Yeah. What we see with strength growth is that the game will try to balance itself out most of the time. And that if you start off really low at the beginning, you'll start to gain more as you go on. But vice versa, if you start off really high, you can end up not seeing any strength ups going forward. So, we hope for the best for all the runners, but it's not guaranteed that he's going to keep up this growth.
Yeah, and you do prefer to start off high because in the middle section of the game, we're going to be using a bunch of strategies that mean that Surge's strength stat doesn't matter quite as much. So you prefer to start high and even out throughout this middle section of the game, and start low and then even out when his strength doesn't matter. And just to elaborate a little bit, like Corporate Mage is saying, is that if you have high stat, your chance on every star of getting another one is just lower. And so we're getting some lucky rolls from Handy here to keep the strength train rolling. I don't think we're at a point where we're down at really low chances for a strength up, but it is significantly lower chance to be continuing to get these. So turns out that what was in here was not the Frozen Flame, and now reinforcements are arriving. That wasn't even Lynx, it was a Shade. So we're in a tough situation. Kid takes General Viper's daughter captive as a way to try and get us out of here, but we are backing ourselves into a corner. And this is sort of setting up the theme of the speedrun of Chrono Cross is being mean to Kid. Because the fastest option whenever you have any choice related to Kid is to ignore her, to say no, or leave her to her own devices.
Just abandon her. Kind of a shame. I saw AW go for the guard skip. He did not get it, but that's okay.
Yeah, I think Handy did as well. I just didn't see on the lower quality window. And it turns out this is showing Kid's true character here a little bit because she's introduced as dangerous. She's a thief from a dangerous group of thieves, and the Viper and Lynx are trying to get us to come with them because we shouldn't trust her. But Lynx decides he doesn't care about the hostage and is just going to throw a knife. And Kid pushes Riddell out of the way so that she doesn't get hurt. It means she gets hit with this knife. It's sort of your first real hint that Kid is, nicer than she puts on the airs of.
He's got a heart of gold. Or maybe silver.
Oh, here comes the name drop. Are you ready for it?
I'm ready.
Lynx wants us to come join him because you are... Wait for it. The Chrono Trigger!
He said it. He said the thing.
He said the words, guys.
Always like the legitimate concern from Lynx when Surge drops because he really needs Surge. So he really thought Surge was going to die by jumping off the cliff. Oh, and Pierre's here too. All right.
So we get found and rescued by a boy on a boat. He takes us off to another village where we can recover. And just a little bit of a detour here. And this is where we get our next choice related to Kid. Because turns out that wasn't a very nice knife. So we're talking to the boy that saved us here in a moment once we leave this hut. And Kid's like, oh yeah, I'm fine. Fine.
Just putting on a brave face. Yeah, this section of the game is, I always call one of the slowest parts because you get some pretty somber music and then a lot of dialogue. But at the very least, it's a nice break from all the chaos of Viper Manor. So we'll be able to, or at least the runners will be able to go on and be cleared mentally and emotionally for the next
It is
section.
also a very nice section to put Poshel in the front and watch that adorable animation. Looking at Andy, and he's still at 10 strength, so didn't get one from the catch-up fight. We'll have a few more opportunities for strength ups coming up for Andy. Hopefully we can get a few strength gains before Fort Dragonia. Going into Fort Dragonia with very low strength can be a pain, but if that happens and Lena has high magic, that can be sort of made up for. So we'll see what happens.
I think Andy W is very skilled with the backup strategies in case
definitely
things aren't good regarding strength and magic. So I have full confidence in him.
Andy is one of the better people at being able to finish almost any run, because he's done a lot of no resets. He's done a lot of runs and events, so he's done lots of practice of no resets. He's practiced a lot of the backup strats. Evil Ash, when he's playing the game, is also very good at that, but he hasn't been playing Chrono Cross recently. Have seen him hanging out in chat, so everybody say hi to Evil Ash, another very good runner of Chrono Cross. I did not see the numbers
right here.
for Andy.
3-3 or 9-3, one of the two. Kind of hard to
Hopefully chat will tell us, because our preview window is just a little bit lower quality. 9 and 3. Okay, better than what Handy got, but still not fantastic.
We see Harley, or Harl, however you want to say her name. She's showing herself in her transparent blue pants.
Yeah.
But
fun thing here is that when Harley disappears, she doesn't go away, and if you look closely, you can see her outline still standing there in front of the bed, because it was easier to make her transparent than it was to remove her model, which is a common trick in these points of RPGs. But this is our next instance of being mean to Kid. We have a choice. She was poisoned by a very rare poison on the blade, and we know of where we can go to find a very rare Hydra to try and find an antidote for her. But it's a pretty big detour, and we're given a choice on if we want to do that or not. Excuse me, sorry about that.
Like, Closetowar is about to start the catch-up fight. I mean, the guard fight, and then the catch-up. And Andy W is about to start the Neo Enbo fight. You get to watch those and see how those go.
Story-wise, I think the game very much expects you to go do the detour to try and save Kid, but it introduces an entire extra dungeon, which if you say no here and decide you're not going to do it, just skips it. So it saves a significant portion of time to not save Kid here. So Korcha is upset at us, and he takes Kid's amulet, which turns out is the key to switching between worlds. I think in some dialogue, you talk to Kid later that we're not going to hear. She explains that she doesn't know how it works, but her amulet just seems to protect her. Whenever she's gravely wounded, she'll wake up at some point, healed, and doesn't remember what happened. So it's got some powers. We don't explain how it works. We got some cycling through the party there from Handy, but sadly no Poshel in front. But you can still watch that wonderful animation of Poshel bouncing along.
Just plodding along.
It's suggested that we go talk to the Sage here, so they can talk to us about Surge a little bit. But we want to use Korcha's boat, and he's a little bit upset because he doesn't like that we're not going off to help our friend. Which is a little bit strange, because right before we're given the choice, Korcha's like, are you going to do this? Are you going to go risk yourselves to go save a girl that you just met?
Yeah.
Like, kind of implying that he doesn't think you should. And then when you say you're not going to do it, he gets really upset, because you should be doing everything you can to help your friends.
Great character.
Korcha is a kid. And,
Yeah.
I mean, he acts like a kid sometimes. We'll just put it that way.
But luckily, Macha's here to set him straight.
Yeah, and this is another instance where your choices lock you out of certain characters and give you other ones. If you were to save Kid, you would get Korcha to join your party. But when you say you're not going to save Kid and make Korcha give a temper tantrum, Macha joins your party instead.
Yeah, close to War Stream, we get to see the wonderful Flame Knock attack again.
Absolutely, one of my favorite animations in this game. And let's see how Closetowar is doing on stats.
I think he's at 12 strength for Surge so far.
That's pretty good if he's there. Not quite as good as Handy was doing, but definitely still in a reasonable number. I don't think he got the Power Glove. I didn't see, but I'm just gonna assume he didn't get it because it's a pretty rare chance. Alright, will he get another one? Drum roll. You do want to be a sort of a minimum amount going to Fort Dragonia. And there we go, 13 strength for Closetowar. So, pretty good amount. Only one behind Handy, and but without the Power Glove. Power Glove is going to become less of a big deal as we go on. We're going to keep finding better accessories to the point where we'll no longer be equipping it. So it really is just a nice time bonus through Viper Manor for the most part.
Yeah, the Power Glove will essentially just be a nice bonus and carry us through Fort Dragonia and maybe a little bit afterward, but it falls off almost immediately after that.
Through Fort Dragonia, we wind up stacking all of our best accessories onto one physical damage dealer, and then you can put the Power Glove on your secondary damage dealer, just make them do a little bit more. But it's not that big of a deal, and it'll be obsolete pretty soon. So that difference of whether it drops or not is not going to play a huge role in the entire run.
So Serge is talking to the sage, Diria. She's just laying out some proper nouns, land of Genesis, dimensional distortion. So that's enough for us. So we're going to go to Termina, go see Glenn, and also get some more equipment.
Yeah, she's doing the typical JRPG thing of I am the smart person who's going to use a lot of words that you don't know what they mean yet. But if you pay attention throughout the game, you'll learn what she was talking about later on. Pretty common thing. She's just being mysterious.
I always thought you could recruit her. I wanted her in my party when I was little.
Yeah, it's interesting because for the most part, there's a lot of characters in this game, and the general way you can tell if they're recruitable is if they have a portrait when they're talking to you. And Diria is one of the only characters that has a portrait that will not join your party.
Among those are like Serge's mom, Miguel, Balthazar. Can't get Balthazar. Una, Lena's sister, and the shopkeeper. Lisa.
Yep.
Yeah.
Lisa.
All right. Closetowar's going for the guard skip.
Ooh, let's see if he gets it. Did not get it. It's nice to see everybody going for it. Like I said earlier, there's a setup to give you a chance at getting it. That's the most you can do setup-wise, is to make sure that you have a chance to get the frame window. But it is still a frame-perfect trick with no real good reference point on the timing. So there's definitely no shame in missing it. It's more of a big pog moment if you do get it, because it is very difficult to try and get. A little bit of an unlucky formation for Closetowar as well, getting 4 guards there. More than what you can see, but still not a huge deal. With the iron weapons, good strength, they should go down pretty fast.
So Superhandi just purchased most of the elements we'll need for, the next 30 minutes to an hour. And because he was able to get the Ice Blast drop from Marcy, he did not have to get Aqua Ball, an extra one. And thankfully, that'll come into play in Fort Dragonia, and a little bit before that too, how useful Ice Blast is. And so did Andy W. He got Ice Blast as well. So it's nice.
We're going to have a pretty big menu coming up for Handy as well, and it's probably the most intimidating part of learning this game is probably the equipment menus that you're going to be seeing once Handy leaves the menu. But as I've told, I think Handy, because Handy actually started learning this run just a couple months ago and is here in the relay because Handy's put in a lot of time, has gotten pretty good at it. It's just one of those things where you practice a little bit, and as you do runs, you'll just sort of get better at it naturally over time as you find that the timing and the rhythm for doing the menus well.
Yeah, it's definitely a different type of menu system as opposed to other RPGs. There's a lot of horizontal menuing as opposed to just your traditional vertical. So it takes a little bit to get used to.
And especially in the element menu, every time you equip an element or you're switching between the different levels, there's a little bit of an animation. So you can't input while that animation is going off. So getting that timing of like when you can press your next input really does speed it up. It's one of those things where like as you're getting better at the game and you're doing runs, there'll be a split that has a big menu and you'll get a gold split. And you're like, wow, that was fantastic. And then, a few runs later, you get another gold split. And you're like, wait, how did I get another gold split? And you just keep improving it as you just naturally get better at those menus, more than you would think is initially possible. So definitely don't let that scare you away if you're interested in running this game. As you do more runs, it'll get easier and easier.
And luckily for this speed run, there's a lot of resources available that makes running the game and learning it very easy. I would say pretty easy. So
there's there's a fantastic PowerPoint that's linked in the Chrono Discord the Chrono speedruns. That's also the place to go if you want to learn any of these speedruns. We share a Chrono speedruns Discord between Chrono Trigger, Radical Dreamers, and Chrono Cross. It's just a great place to go if you want to learn any of these. People are always happy to answer questions. It's very important here as well. Matcha's going to join the party. You want to put her in the party, even though we're not going to keep her in the party. Because if you just exit out of the menu, she will go off, jump off the pier, and swim away, and it takes 20 seconds. Not even kidding, I timed it.
Yeah, I will say it's worth watching at least once, because she just swims home, and that's quite a distance away from Terminus. But of course, in a run, you hope to not accidentally say no to her.
And it's definitely some powerful energy coming from Matcha. Okay, let's see what Closetowar gets. His code is going to be coming up soon. Hopefully we can get some good luck, because the others have not been getting good luck so far.
It's good to see what Glenn's strength will be. Usually Glenn will be anywhere from 11 strength to 20, and on the high side is pretty rare, but the average will usually be 14, 15, or 16.
Alright, we're coming up on the code here, and Handy did not accidentally fail to recruit Matcha. And we get 8-6.
Wow. Okay, well.
Just bad luck across the board.
Yeah, well, at least they're on even ground for the most part.
Handy gets the gold medal for worst luck
Yeah.
on the Snake RNG. Congratulations, you are our winner of Feeling Bad. Better luck next time. So this is the first detour for shopping. Marbule has some very good shops. Only one of them is open right now, but later on a second shop is going to open. And these element shops have just fantastic things in them. They've got Strengthen, Eagle Eye, Turn Elements, Genius, Weak-Minded, etc. Those are all fantastic elements. I think Genius and Weak-Minded are in the second shop, but we want to pick up some Eagle Eyes and Strengthens to at the very least. Eagle Eye is an interesting element because if you remember how we were talking earlier about how accuracy and managing your chances to hit are very important, Eagle Eye is a temporary buff that will give whoever you cast it on a 99% chance to hit every attack across the board. It is 99%. It's not a thing where it's actually full percentage to attack and it just only shows 99. One of the things runners like to do of this game is you keep track of how many times 99% chance misses. It will happen a few times every run.
Yeah, I say you could always expect it at least once, and you hope it's early on as opposed to later on, because misses will really hurt in a speedrun setting towards the end of the game.
So yeah, it definitely happens. Bad luck, I think I've seen 3 or 4 in a single run before. It was not fun. It is worth mentioning that sometimes it's not a 99% miss, because the percentage on the side does not account for if an enemy has evasion. Most enemies don't have evasion, but some do, and that will mean that your chance to hit is actually a little bit lower. And common theme of the upcoming fights is going to be using Eagle Eye on your strongest character and just go into town with 3 attacks, fishing for crits. Because now that we have access to Eagle Eyes, that's just a thing we can do. And that's why we've been talking so much about the strength stats, because with the way that strength scales, the damage scaling at high strength when you get a crit is not linear, and it can get out of control when you have much, much higher strength than par. Going into a section, it can lead to some very fast boss fights if you've got high strength and you land a crit at a good point.
I was just going to say, Pierre was the hero today on Andy W's stream. Thanks. Congratulations, Pierre.
Good job, Pierre. You did the thing. This is an interesting thing coming up on Handy's screen. We are entering the pirate ship, and it turns out the ghost ship was a ploy. They use it to scare people. We're talking to Fargo, and he wants to know what we're doing, but he doesn't think that we are capable of taking on Lynx. He thinks we're being fools. So he's going to try and dissuade us from facing Lynx, and in order to do that, he's going to test our strength. And interestingly enough, it's supposed to be a 3-fight gauntlet, but the game just you can run away from every encounter. We mentioned this earlier. The first encounter, if you run away from, it just, okay, move on to the second fight. You can just completely skip it.
Yeah,
Seems to be a little bit of an oversight in the game, but we definitely make usage of it in the speedrun. So you'll see this enemy fight come up. There's actually a couple different formations, and some of them look scary, but you just run away. The best part is that Fargo even comments on it. He's like, what? They're not strong enough for you? Okay, well, try this. So here we go.
We got the better fight. It's actually pretty scary. You got to fight Polly. I have not seen what Lena's HP and magic is for Superhandi, but Polly has a pretty dangerous attack called Flap, and
her HP is pretty good. She's at 119 at this point. So
there's one blue on the field, and then with this turn blue, I'm gonna have the second one. Every blue element on the field will reduce Polly's attack. But we hope that Lena is able to get off this Ice Blast. She did. And this way, Surge and Lena are very likely to survive an attack, which can save a bit of time.
And Polly is one of the more random boss fights for the most part. We're talking about how their AP at the start of the fight is random. Oh my goodness.
Wow.
Just taking Polly out instantly. Very good fight. Polly's range of potential APs can be huge. Polly can start with 16 AP to the point where Polly never gets a turn in the perfect situation. Or Polly can also start with like 3 and just interrupt you immediately with a flap. And if you don't have high HP on Lena, just take you out instantly. Also, that was another strength up for Handy. 17.
Nice. Yeah, I saw Lena's still at 12, and I think Glenn was at 15 or 16.
Mm-hmm.
But
Glenn got a +2, so
yeah, so 16.
Glenn is doing well. And now we're fighting Fargo, and this is an interesting fight because we're going to see the first double tech. A little bit of a carryover from Chrono Trigger, but since there are 40 plus characters in this game, not every combination of characters learn double or triple techs. But this is the other great thing about Glenn. He's very strong. He gets access to a plot-relevant, extremely strong weapon later on for free. And this double element we're going to see from Surge and Glenn is just useful so many times throughout the late game. It is extremely powerful, and most importantly, it's a different innate color than both of them, which allows us to really bring in some interesting strategies. So here comes the X Strike, and you see it's going to hit like a truck because both of them have very high strength. Can Handy keep the train going?
Let's see.
Yes. Oh my god.
Wow.
18 strength. So this is exactly what we were talking about earlier. The chances are with this high strength start is that Handy's strength gains will slow down at some point. But through the middle of the game, Surge's strength doesn't really matter. So having this good luck in the early portion and having it even out later on is just better RNG-wise, because you'll gain a bunch of time from having high strength, and then once it slows down, it doesn't really matter too much because we're relying on other methods to do damage for a while. And we're entering another really big RNG section, but it's interesting because this RNG sort of evens itself out a little bit in that there's a trick you can do to make your chances at getting the key a little bit better. We'll see if Handy goes for the Ghost Dance. It's interesting because if you do it wrong, it guarantees the worst possible key RNG. But if you get the best possible key RNG, you actually wind up pretty low on money, which you have to adjust your strategies a little bit. So if you get the worst possible key RNG here, we have to find who has a key. In order to do that, we have to do some random encounters. And every time we do one of those encounters, there's a chance of that person having the key. But if you get the worst key RNG, you're set on money and you can buy more things and you'll have a good time in Fort Dragonia. If you have the best possible key RNG, you'll just be a little short on a few things. Have to adjust your strategies a little bit. So you still lose time by having the worst possible key RNG, but it's not as bad as it looks.
It's worth noting that at the start of this section, the ghost ship, this enemy just charges in, and you feel, well, I gotta defeat him, right? But no, you could just run away, and he despawns. But also, the ghost ship is one of the more difficult parts of the run, at least to learn. Opening doors in this game is very challenging, because doors have very strange hitboxes, and for the most part, you have to be perpendicular to a door to open it. And it just makes it worse because we have these ghosts that pop up and chase us. So you have to be very accurate and quick to open a door as you go through.
Oh, are we going to get the ghost dance? Okay, so we have to talk to the enemies here several times, and you need to talk to this guy twice for him to move out of the way, and try to avoid this fight. And if you can pull back and get him despawned far enough away, then you can move forward. There we go. Handy managed to do the ghost dance successfully. But if you wind up having that guy chasing you while you're trying to talk to the second person, you can wind up forcing the worst possible RNG for the key on accident, which is unfortunate. But Handy did it well, is able to successfully get the flag set. Talking to that NPC twice is what makes the roll for who has the key happen. And if you're talking to him and that text box hasn't fully filled yet, and you get into an encounter with that wraith, that it just doesn't really do the roll, and it goes for the backup, which is having to do all the checks. So that's why it's slightly risky to go for it, but we're all right. He managed to do the ghost dance, saved fighting that extra encounter. Every time you get an extra encounter, even if it's one you can run away from, there's just pretty big time loss of the load-in animation, the camera panning, and then running away, and all the post-battle menus. So every time we skip a fight, even though it looks like sometimes we're wasting some time to skip a fight, you're saving about 30 seconds. So everybody, I want you to guess in chat 1, 2, 3, or 4 for who has the key. 4 is extremely unlikely for Handy since he got the skip correctly. That mostly only happens if you mess it up and force the backup state of the game. And we're guessing which NPC in order has the key. Number 1 is this first NPC we're going to talk to. Number 2 will be the second one. 3 is the third. And we got it on 1. Okay.
He's getting really lucky. Lots of strength. Pretty decent RNG so far. He's got a nice lead.
This,
oh, go ahead.
I was going to say, this wraith, it's really weird. You have to hug the left side of the ladder on the way down. Otherwise, he's going to get you in the fight. And it's a very small thing, but if you watch, you'll see Surge will shift to the left a little bit near the bottom, and that is necessary to not get into that fight. That's all you have to do to skip that fight. It's harder than it looks at first glance, but very consistent.
Last bar to the ship are these two jerks, but no problem for Superhandi. Got by them. And that's the ghost ship. It's going to open up a chest that contains a photon beam, a very strong white elemental attack that we'll make use of later on in the run. But other than that, it's just we're going to get ready for Deadhead, the boss.
And we get another forced encounter that we can just run away from. This one is also funny. If you get the best possible key RNG and you get a very good formation, you can fight it just for a little bit more money. But some of the formations on this fight are terrifying.
Yes.
Like, never ever try to fight some of the formations you see here. But we get a single Wraith. That's really easy, especially with our high strength. Just hit him a couple times, dash and slash, take him out. Get a couple hundred more gold will help out our money routing just a little bit. So fortunate there for Handy that actually got that formation. Don't want to run away in that situation with first key and a good enemy formation. Just take that extra money and move on to the boss fight.
See Closetowar starting his Lynx 1 fight. See how that goes for him. Ooh, nice crit.
Yeah, the Lynx fight and the Marcy fight are some of the few instances where you don't want to get lucky during the fight. Because you really want this magic ring steal. If you get the rare steal, I think it's a silver loop.
I think
it increases. What is it?
Yes, a power glove.
A power glove? Okay.
Yeah, so it's not good, but it's not the worst thing either.
You would prefer to have the magic ring, because we're coming up to the point where the magic stat is king coming up. And It'd be less of a big deal if you're like Andy. Was it Andy that found the magic ring on Ketchup?
Yes, he got.
Like,
He has 2 of them right now.
So if you got the magic ring on Ketchup and then you stole the rare power glove, you could probably just take that. Be like, okay, that's fine. It evens out. Not really going to make you much usage of the power glove, but not going to be too unhappy about missing that power ring. So here's the Deadhead. If you get absolute perfect AP, good attack rolls, and I think 2 crits, you can skip a very long animation in this fight. But you have to high roll real hard to try and get that.
Yeah, everything has to line up. All your strength values, Lena's magic.
Mhm.
For the most part, Deadhead is pretty nice for boss. It's not too inconsistent.
Yeah, he's not scary at all, and he is undead, continuing the RPG trope of being able to heal for damage. So, especially since he uses the diminish element, it will reduce the damage, but that doesn't diminish healing elements, so the Cure Plus will still do full damage. And we didn't get the crits from Handy. Handy has high enough strength where if we got good AP and some crits, definitely could have skipped this attack here. And this is the problem. It's a pretty long animation and has a chance of applying darkness, which makes it so that you're not going to hit your attacks very frequently. But I think I've seen that twice while routing and never in a run of skipping the bad breath attack.
Alright, nice. So that late crit played in. Normally you would end with a 3-2, and then if that's not enough, you'd finish off with an X strike with Glenn. But he was able to finish it with just the 3.
Oh my god. 19 strength for Handy.
He's all set.
Handy is schmovin'. So now, even though we have cleared the way to Fort Dragonia, we're going to backtrack because a second shop that we mentioned earlier is going to open up in Marbule, and it has the best elements in the game, hands down. And we're going to make usage of some of them in Fort Dragonia, but we just want to get them now because we're going to use them throughout the entire game, and it's easier to backtrack here than coming back for them later since it's right here. And I'm talking about Magnify, Diminish, Genius, and Weak-Minded. Magnify makes it so that all elements do more damage. Diminish makes it so all elements do less damage. Genius boosts someone's magic stat in the same way that Strengthen does. And as we talked about before, magic is a much harder to come by stat, so every point is more valuable. And Weak-Minded lowers an enemy's magic defense. So especially since Lena is going to be picking up the party and carrying us all on her broad shoulders here through Fort Dragonia, we definitely want those elements. It's also going to make some of these fights that are normally very dangerous much safer. And Magnify and Diminish are interesting in that mathematically, if you were to use them both, you'd wind up at 75%, but they're not quite coded correctly. Whichever one you cast first works. So on a boss that's going to cast Diminish on you, if you cast Magnify first, Magnify is just active and the Diminish doesn't do anything, which is going to be pretty important in a few fights coming up.
Yeah, there's one particular fight where that must happen. We must go before the boss, or else. But that's not for a while.
You'll see a lot more of us using Diminish because cutting elemental power by 50% makes some extremely terrifying bosses much more manageable in the speedrun. So we've got another big menu coming up here for Handy. Just got to get ourselves set up for Fort Dragonia. If you've got low strength on Surge, you can give all of your strength accessories to Glenn. But we've got high strength on both Glenn and Surge, so it looks like we're still going to give strength to Glenn. But if you had high strength on Surge, low on Glenn, you'd keep all your strength accessories on Surge. You just sort of evaluate which of these two is going to hit harder through these fights, give them the accessories, make them hit even harder. So there's two sort of ways to kind of deal with this, with both of them being very high strength, especially since there's going to be another menu coming up. And both of these enemies are yellow and Glenn is green. Definitely do want to give him the accessories here. But looking at those stats, with both Surge and Glenn are very high strength right now. So this should be a pretty good Fort Dragonia. Even if we had pretty low magic from Lena, the high strength from the two wouldn't make that too big of a deal. You'd lose a little bit of time, but not too much. And here
Salt and Pepper, number 3, the third encounter with them. This is the last tutorial, I believe, talking about trap elements. I never personally used trap elements when I played casually, but I know quite a few people who did.
Alright, everybody, get ready to spam W's. It's very important. We always spam W's with Pepper and Chrono Cross. There's absolutely no way to speed up this text box. You just get to watch it.
You're just baffled by his stupidity, and it's great.
One of the interesting things is that the Salt and Pepper fights, you'll notice we don't attack them early on, except maybe building elements and casting things. Because at the start of the fights, during the tutorial segments, they always have like 10,000 HP. And they don't actually get their real health values until they're done with tutorial segments. But their health gets set before Pepper starts attacking Salt. So the RNG you get for these attacks from Pepper can be relevant, and Pepper can kill Salt for you if he is particularly angry today. And it's always hilarious to see this happen.
Ooh, nice crit. Also, this Salt and Pepper fight has some of the most important drops in the run.
Oh yeah.
Both the common drops, which are like 90% chance to get, and the rare drops are very useful throughout the run. But we'll see what everybody gets today.
Yeah, if you're going for a PB or a world record, you want to see the rare drops. If you're in a race or an event, you want to see the common drops, because the common drops just make it much safer. The rare drops let you potentially high roll. So we'll also see how we're going to do on strength here. I think Handy is definitely hoping for the common drops here, because he's already had some good drops in a good spot. There we go. Yeah, both common drops, so just 2 pieces of armor. Definitely will make coming up here before the first Red Dragon fight safer, because this is one of our first tricky fights. Red Dragon hits really hard, has a very hard hitting Fire Breath attack, and it can blow Lena up really hard. But
so speaking of really good luck, Andy W got a Glen with 19 strength.
ooh,
That is
excuse me?
Yeah, very, very good. He'll be able to, at the very least, plow through the fights in Fort Dragonia with Glen.
So this is the first agreed upon save. The racers all agreed they're going to save at particular points. You can do extras if you want, but everybody's going to at least do the same saves minimum. And this is because this is one of 2 fights where you cannot menu after you run away. And he likes to talk after you run away. So you have to run away twice, go through the text twice, and then fight him again, to the point where it's actually just faster, if you saved, to reset the console and load your save, if this goes poorly.
Yeah, for those who are interested in learning this run, this fight is probably the most dangerous to learn, because there's not a lot you can do besides what Railkun mentioned. Just reset or run away and try to heal up. But the Fire Dragon, is very powerful, and you hope that there's an even distribution of damage between all the characters, and that he doesn't hit Lena.
Yeah, you also don't want him to physical attack Lena, because then if he fire breaths, she's going to die. You also want her to have good health, because HP gains are random, and the worst I've seen coming into this fight is Lena with 105 HP, which meant no matter what happened, no matter what armor I equipped, if he fiery breathed her, she died. There just wasn't anything I could do about it. So you see Fiery Breath will be coming up here pretty shortly. Cross your fingers. We want that on Surge or Glen. Surge or Glen. Right, that goes on Surge. You see it does 100 damage to Surge, and he's not even opposite color. So that hits Lena, and it's painful. So we got through the worst part of this fight. We're going to buff up Lena. She's going to throw a very hefty Ice Blast on him, because the other issue with this Red Fire Dragon is he also just has a lot of HP.
Yeah, we're going to see how powerful Lena is with using Ice Blast, and just how useful of an element Ice Blast is. It's not only a quick element cast, but it's just very strong for this party.
Mm-hmm. So we made sure she had 5 element levels, so she could cast a 1 and a 4. So you start off with Aqua Ball, put a blue on the field. Surge uses a little bit of stamina to give her enough stamina back. and uses an Aqua Beam, so that there's 2 blue on the field when she uses this Ice Blast, and now it's a full blue field, which weakens him significantly. So even if you miss here and he starts going to town, his physical attacks will hit much less hard with a full blue field. Just nice little safety strat on top of potentially helping you finish the fight faster. And we did see that the Salt and Pepper fight, Handy missed his first strength up in a while, but gets another one here. So still 19 strength, well above par.
So Lena is a little on the low side at 13 magic. You hope that she reaches 15 after the next 2 fights coming up. And so that can still happen, but it becomes quite a challenge going forward into Fort Dragonia if she's not at 15 or close to 15. But hopefully they won't have that problem today.
And we're coming up on another tricky fight. Not as bad as the Fire Dragon. You have to fight all 3 Devas at the same time. 4th Deva position is currently open. There is no 4th Deva. And we do not want Marcy to get turns. She'll get 1, but she has much more powerful elements this time, and she has very good magic stats when she's an enemy. So if she gets multiple turns, she can do lots of damage and make this fight very, very difficult. So our priority is take out Marcy as soon as possible in this fight.
Luckily, we have X Strike, which with Surge and Glenn's strength will make quick work of her. It can be a bit of a challenge if they're low, because then you have to rely on Lena to finish off Marcy, which he may or may not do.
And Handy is correctly recognizing that with the high strength, he doesn't need to put all the damage on Marcy. Just a little bit of damage from Surge building up the element levels will be enough, plus the X Strike. So having Glenn hit Zoa here is nice because Glenn will do extra damage to Zoa because of the elemental difference. And he is the biggest and beefiest enemy here. He's also a little bit annoying. I think on his 3rd turn he does an attack you don't want to see, so you take him out second, but not nearly as important to take out as Marcy.
Very well, Marcy. 290 damage. That's pretty high.
Ooh, he got Geronimo off, probably, unless we get a crit.
Yeah, it's pretty normal to see Geronimo. It's
you can skip it if you've got the high strength like this.
Yeah. Because that green on the field would have boosted Glenn's attacks, but with Geronimo, it lowers it back to a more normal level.
And we've just got Karsh. He's already used his most dangerous attack, which is Axial Axe. This one coming up, this next one's going to be Dragon Rider. Can be a little bit annoying, but he's green. So Glenn is green. You're not really worried about him hitting Glenn too hard. He's not going to hit Lena too hard. The damage has been kind of spread nicely, so nobody's really in danger to dying to Karsh at this point. Just got to finish him off. And one of the interesting things coming up is there's going to be a fight coming up here that's only present because we skipped the whole side quest of getting through the volcano. Because it suggested that we go through to the Water Dragon Isle and you can freeze the lava to get through. But when you do that, you miss out on a very important element. So the enemy puts an extra game here, an extra enemy in your way. Also, 22 strength for Handy.
Nice. Lena's still a little low, but Surge and Glenn will be prepared for the rest. Yeah, I didn't know that. I mean, I was aware of the element that we get by doing the frog prince.
Oh, yeah. I think I think I'm mistaken. I think he's always there, but you only get the star level and the element if you skip the water dragon.
Gotcha.
Because normally you have to do a boss fight and you get the element when you do the side quest.
So
but I think you still fight him.
Fargo. Let's see what his strength value's at. Still 13. You got it. But Glenn's at 21. And Lena's at 16. Magic, I think.
Yeah, so Andy's strength on Surge is a little bit low, but Glenn can carry him very hard through Fort Dragonia. And high magic especially will make that pretty good for Andy. So,
yeah, it's worth noting that to anyone who's not familiar with the run, Surge is more of a support role at this part of the game, And Glenn and Lena are going to be the main damage dealers for most of the enemies going forward.
If Glenn has low strength and Surge has high strength, Surge will sort of take on the damage dealer role. But that's only if That's only if Glenn's strength is very low and Surge's is high. Sort of a backup strat. You don't really want to be in that situation. So like we mentioned before, this enemy is sort of a mini boss, and when you come here and you've skipped the side quest, we get a very important element here. Because there are summons in this game, they work very differently from in Final Fantasy games, where you just have this very powerful element, and it has a long cast time, it does tons of damage. Summons have extra requirements in this game. They need to be cast by the same color character that the summon is, and the entire field needs to be filled with the same color. So you see when the full field goes blue, here in a moment, you'll see stars next to the field. And you also need to have stars to cast. Stars are your levels, but you also gain them as a resource every time you level up. And summoning uses 1 star. So there is actually a limit to the maximum number of times you can use summons in the game.
And I think if you use an in, then that restores your star points. So, luckily, there are enough parts in the run where we'll get an automatic like rest break, so our stars will be filled up for the most part.
We're also going to wind up with something like 40 star levels, and we're only use the Frog Prince element here. The number has dropped a lot as the routing has improved. I want to say 7. I'm not confident in that number. It used to be up around 13 or 14, and it has dropped a lot. And it's a long animation, but you'll see first time you get to see Lena cast it, why it's important. Even with a low magic value, having access to a summon early on is very good. That's why Lena's important, because she's the only blue magic user we have access to at this point. So if we had accepted Kid into our party, we wouldn't be able to use Frog Prince at all throughout this section of the game.
It's like Andy W. had done a successful ghost dance. Nice. But in addition to the summoning, like, it's true it's a bit convoluted, and especially if you're playing casually, you don't know what you're up against. But it also creates an idea for strategy and how you want to do fights. So yeah, you need to fill up a full field of 1 color, but it's that much more satisfying when you're able to do so.
Mm-hmm.
So, but yeah, as you mentioned, make great use of Frog Prince through this dungeon and in the future as well.
You could get through most of the fights in this dungeon without Frog Prince, but Tarusoid would be a pain.
Yeah.
Absolute awful fight without Frog Prince. And this is an interesting puzzle because you stand on this this pad, and depending on the order of your characters, it rearranges the blocks in the other room, and you can go onto that blue pad outside to shuffle them around. But you do need to press a button that a lot of people don't realize exists casually, which is the select button to do this puzzle.
Yeah, easily the most frustrating puzzle in the game unless you have prior knowledge.
Mm-hmm.
I spent like an hour trying to figure out what to do because I didn't know about the select button. But... So
what it does is it tells you what order you're currently in by head, body, or tail. And when you enter the area, whoever you have in front, like Surge, Glenn, Lena, then the Surge would be the head, Glenn would be the body, and Lena is the tail. And it remembers that. And hitting select reorders it. And when you stand on the pad, depending on which order you have the head, the body, and the tail, things reorder. But what it will also do is normally all you can do is cycle them in order. So like Surge, you go from 1, 2, 3, 2, 3, 1, 3, 1, 2. But one of the solutions you actually want to have as I think it's 1, 3, 2, which is not possible to do unless you switch the characters with select and then stand on that blue pad.
Correct. So I was taking a look at Closetowar's stats for Lena. She's at 13 right now. He hasn't even begun the gauntlet before Fort Dragonia. So luckily, he'll most likely be good to go as far as magic goes. It's worth noting that without the proper magic level, that some fights need to be altered and they can take a little longer, and they become a lot more risky or dangerous depending on what you're facing.
Oh yeah,
So-
for sure.
Really try to keep track of both strength and magic, but for Lena, it's magic.
Andy got third try key in the pirate ship. A little bit bad luck. Does mean he can run away from that extra fight that Handy took. But Handy got lucky on that extra fight, so it's not too big of a deal for Handy.
We see Superhandi doing this chest puzzle. This bat that's circling around has a very strange hitbox, and you got to be very careful going around it if you just want to avoid the encounter. It looks like he's all set. Yeah.
So this fun fight coming up is fun. We're going to be fighting Giant Gloop. There's a couple bosses we're going to be fighting that are very elemental. This is a blue elemental character, and we want to have a blue field to be able to use frog prints. What we don't want to see happen is there's a chance that Giant Gloop can freeze us. Particularly, Lena can get frozen, which is very bad. But since this boss is blue elemental, frog prints won't do a lot of damage. So Lena is going to turn red. So now the enemy is blue and red, and then we're going to magnify, which will then boost the damage of the frog prints twice, and then we're going to genius Lena. And this is sort of how a lot of this section of the game goes, is stacking damage multipliers. So now, despite this enemy being blue, when we use this Ice Blast coming up, you're going to see a pretty hefty amount of damage. And since this enemy is blue, he'll help us stack the field blue. If we get bad luck, and you got to heal or revive or wait for the freeze to wear off, then you can just wait, because eventually the enemy will use a blue field element and just set it blue for you. But see that he targeted Surge. Surge got frozen at this point. We don't care if Surge is frozen, so we'll just progress through, use the frog prints, and that's a pretty good fight.
Yeah, Giant Gloop is a friend. I mean, very strange friend, but for the most part, even when you have a bad setup or bad luck with AP, it's a pretty easy fight compared to the next one coming up, which can be quite the troll.
Yes. Worst case scenario for Giant Gloop is you just defend for a little bit, let him use blue field, and then you kill him with the frog prints. The main reason why you don't want that to happen is that your Magnify can wear off if you have to wait too long, because Lena is frozen. But yeah, the next fight is the big troll fight of this dungeon. Everybody give Handy your energy. We want to see 3 good Taurusoids from everybody. Because when Taurusoid goes bad, it goes really bad, and you can get into a chain of having to run away from him over and over and over again. Definitely a very common reset point when going for PVs.
Absolutely. Yeah, I saw on Closetowar's stream that Glenn's at 17 strength, which is above average. So he'll be able to also make good use of that strength going forward. And Andy W's finishing or starting Deadhead, so he shouldn't have too much trouble with this one either.
Unfortunately, Handy had to go to the menu and cure that status effect because he had the flu.
Oh yeah.
And one of the side effects of the flu, some of them have on the field effects, and flu makes you wobble as you run. You can't run straight. Whenever you get the flu, you have to go and instantly cure it. It's not okay.
Yeah. The other one that's a menace is Sprain. That causes you to walk when you can't run anymore until it's cured. But we shouldn't see Sprain for a while, and hopefully not at all in the whole run. But
is Handy gonna try the corner strat? If you do it right, it saves a few seconds. But if you get trapped in the corner, you lose a lot of time. So he's flirting with the corner there and then backed off. Yeah, that's probably the safe thing to do in a relay. There's a very particular location you can stand there in the corner where that enemy will walk by you and not notice you. But if you get it wrong and he turns to attack you, you are trapped in the corner and you must kill him. Running away, you can't get through him because he's still blocking you in the corner. And that enemy has tons of health and it hits like a truck. You do not want to fight that enemy.
Yeah, as opposed to the guard skip earlier, the bot skip is a very high risk, low reward. So it's really not worth going for. It only saves about 8 seconds, maybe. But these enemies that Superhandi that having to go through, these paper moon enemies, are some of the worst in the game. When they turn transparent, you can run through them or around them a lot easier. But it's very tough to see where they are and judge when you can go. But
And the worst part is that they will reappear and become solid again after a random amount of time.
yes.
So sometimes they'll fake you out, they'll go transparent, you start to run through them, and they're like, nope! So here comes Taurozoid. This is a tough fight. He is a very high physical damage dealer. Lena, as you can guess by being our very powerful mage, does not have good defenses. She's got pretty good health at this point, but if he decides to target her and be mean, he can take her out. And if we have to revive Lena and he targets her again, we have to run away. So definitely want to see a good Taurozoid fight from everyone in the relay. You don't want to see this guy start trolling.
Absolutely. Yeah. Luckily, there's a 1 in 3 chance that he's gonna hit different people. I mean, for every time he attacks. But even if it goes for Surge or Glenn, if he doubles up on them, it can still be costly. And if that happens, they'll just run away, heal up, and or they can continue to go forward and slog out the fight. It's still possible to finish him off.
Yeah, so this backdrop, you can't really skip it, not with the way the AP lines up. So you'll see oftentimes the best situation is to just defend. It helps you be a little bit safer. And then start buffing and getting the fields blue afterwards. So you see the Magnify. We're going to start casting blue elements. Lena is pretty close to having 5 levels, which is important because that's what you need for Frog Prince. And importantly, the attack after the backdrop will be a physical. So even if we do need to let him get an extra turn for whatever reason, we can still set up our blue field here. But it looks like Taurozoid is behaving today. We didn't have any misses or problems or trolling, so that's a pretty good Taurozoid. Hopefully this will kill. Low magic, sometimes it won't. We're hoping that because Surge and Glenn have high strength, they're able to make up the damage for us.
Yeah, Lena at 15 magic usually does about 900 damage with Frog Prince.
Yeah, there we go. Cross your fingers.
And Taurozoid only has 1260 HP, so good job for Superhandi.
Yeah, Glenn
He's doing
if
a good
Glenn and Surge didn't have high strength, then he would have survived that attack. I'd have to hit him a few more times, but because Surge and Glenn were just doing a little bit more, we were able to get it with the slightly low magic.
Yeah, so it looks like all 3 runners are able to do a successful Ghost Dance. So that's always nice to see. See if Closetowar gets first try key, second try key, or third. So Superhandi is making his way to the next puzzle, and I really liked this puzzle casually. It's a bit of a statue orientation puzzle, but since we know the solution to it already, there's nothing to it. We just go straight through. And afterward, there's going to be a boss after that that's quite terrifying. So if anyone is pretty sensitive to nightmares or clowns, you may not want to watch, but I'm sure everyone will be fine, though. Closetowar did not get first try key, got maybe second try. A 3 enemy encounter is pretty rare. Normally you get 2 skeletons or 2 wraiths or 1 of each. Getting these like spider-like skeleton head creatures doesn't happen very often. He's making short work of them though.
All right, I'm back. I needed to sip on some water there.
No
So the upcoming boss, like Corporate said, I call him creepypasta. If you don't like looking at weird things that make unpleasant faces, we'll tell you when to look away.
And I saw Andy W. He got the common drops from Salt and Pepper 3, so he should be pretty prepared for the Fire Dragon going forward.
So is this a third try key for Closetowar? Looks like.
Yep.
And that makes somebody in chat unhappy then, because I saw one person at least got both Andy and Handy correctly and was rooting for a second try key for Closetowar. Did not get the 3 out of 3. So this fight is interesting because we want a pretty... there's a small AP range this boss can have, and we've already gotten a few misses. So... gonna be a little bit dangerous to keep going for it, but Handy's gonna try it. If this doesn't work, you can still run away and reset it, but it is one of the faster bosses to go through and set up the Frog Prince on. So even if it does not work out, it's one of the less risky ones to take the risk on.
Yeah, getting the quick kill strategy is not the end of the world, but just so long as you know what you're doing, you'll be able to set up this blue field, because if you're not paying attention to AP from Son of a Gun, he can interrupt the field with white elements, and it's very frustrating.
The only real dangerous thing there was if we got another miss from Lena when she was trying to build her 5th element level. But that didn't happen, so she's able to get the Frog Prince off. Sadly, with the low magic, that Frog Prince does not kill Son of a Gun. When you have good magic, that would take this enemy out in one hit, and here comes the creepiness.
The kiss. Hey, it missed. Good job, Lena. But yeah, Son of a Gun only has 383 HP, which is pretty low, but its magic defenses and regular defenses are very high. So...
Yeah, and the casual way you're intended to fight this fight is that once the mode change happens, it's one of those bosses that will either further increase its magical defense and lower its physical, or the other way around. And you're supposed to take a cue based on the face it's making, on whether you want to use physical or magical. But using a really fast Frog Prince before the mode change can happen can skip that entire animation. Saves quite a bit of time if you can skip the mode change and the kissy wissy and all of that.
Alright, he's taken care of. A bit of a rough fight for Superhandi, but no problems.
Right.
No untoward problems.
You are safe to look at Handy's screen again if you were not a fan of that.
Clown is gone.
We are still getting bonus stats for Handy, and we're rapidly approaching the point where it doesn't matter. Because he's got enough to get through the last couple fights in Fort Dragonia, no problem. And after that, we are going to be relying on alternate damage methods in the mid-game. We kind of split this game up into parts. There is through the end of Fort Dragonia. There is until we get Surge his body back, or until we get the Master Immune, and then the finale of the game. It's sort of roughly in thirds. And the middle section of the game, we're not really going to be using too much physical attacks from Surge. We have an alternate method of getting consistent damage that we'll talk about once we get there.
Yeah, generally as a rule of thumb for the run, you want to leave Fort Dragonia with around 25 strength. That's a very good number. But there's so much variance. I know I've gotten 15, 16 strength, and it's pretty dismal. Surge is going to be or Lynx, spoilers. He's going to be on standby for the most part. We're going to have a very reliable damage dealer to take care of any strength lack thereof. So,
Spoilers, how dare you?
sorry. Getting ahead of myself.
So we're back in the prologue area now, except there's going to be a boss here. It's interesting because there was a boss here in the demo, but it was not this boss. I don't remember what it was off my top of my head, but it was a really strange enemy that was very out of place in the demo. And this enemy can also be a little bit unnerving. It is one of our only 2-stage fights, at least in the very early portions of the game. Most of the bosses in this game are pretty straightforward, and that they've got a health bar. Once you chew through it, they're gone. Don't have like tons of multi-stage fights in this game like in some of the other Final Fantasies from around this time. So we don't want to take out this first stage with using too many of our resources to do it, but we want to take them out pretty fast because we don't want to see Inferno. Inferno is one of the highest level AoE elements, and if you let this enemy Bunyip get too many turns, he will use it on you. And depending on your HP rolls and a little bit of luck, it can just wipe you.
Yeah, indeed. And the second phase, depending on the AP rolls, so RNG, the Bunyip can get an immediate turn. And when that happens, you have to be very careful going forward because you don't want any of your characters to miss. Because just like all or most of the bosses in Fort Dragonia, our goal is to build up a blue field and then use frog prints. But to get an immediate start from Bunyip, that can be difficult or rather scary. But luckily, you didn't have to deal with that.
Yeah, if this part of the fight goes bad, the worst you're going to see is free fall, which is not AoE. It can take out one enemy, one party member with a lot of damage, especially if it hits Surge. But you're far less concerned about that happening as compared to Inferno going off. But most of the time you can phase Bunyip with just that Ice Blast, and we got a pretty good AP roll. So we're going to have Frog Prince coming up. It's a pretty good fight for Handy. And he's rounding out with a good first third of Chrono Cross. Has been pretty solid.
Yeah, absolutely. Very solid. Oh, and if anyone's wondering why Bunyip kind of resembles a rabbit, if you run away from him and then just kind of run around the room, he just hops like crazy as he looks at you. I mean, you never want to run away from him in a run, but if you ever get the chance to, it's pretty amusing to watch.
Here's an interesting backup strat on this fight. If Lena's magic is very low and Surge's is high, you can Luminaire to take him out, but you don't want to be in a situation where that's necessary. Most of the time, if the... we're going to use the Luminaire here anyway. Most of the time, if Lena's magic is high enough, you can wind up skipping this Luminaire just with a few physical attacks. But I guess Handy's going for it just to be extra safe. Don't want to deal with having to heal if that free fall goes off, most likely.
Plus, it's a nice animation to watch.
It is. You don't see it too many times in this.
You get to see a few flashy level 7 this run, so. Right.
Definitely get to see Harley's. I'm not sure how many other level 7s we see.
Yeah, I think it's just Harley. It's still nice, though.
Yeah.
So we see Andy W is about to enter Fort Dragonia, and Closetowar is on the gauntlet on his way to Fort Dragonia. So everyone's been keeping pace for the most part. Closetowar is able to, if he's able to get the rare drops, he can have a nice advantage going forward.
Yep, Handy moving up towards the conclusion of this area, watching the Salt and Pepper fight for Closetowar. This will be a big turning point, like you said. Because the Sky Jin ring, especially, is +2 magic. If that one drops, and you have high magic on Lena already, she can blast through the fort. You can skip extra turns on the bosses on every fight. You can skip that Luminaire. You can one-shot things with Frog Prince that normally wouldn't get one-shot. It's very nice high roll if you get it, but...
Dragoon Gauntlet, the Skygen Ring plays a role going forward, so even about more than halfway through, you're still making good use of it. But unlike the Dragoon Gauntlet, we end up not needing it. The Dragoon Gauntlet will always be equipped in some fashion till the end of the run. Speaking of, we're about to fight a boss where that is the common drop, and we really hope to see it, not the rare drop. See what else.
It is all right if you miss that drop. It kind of is unfortunate, but it means that you don't have to worry about another drop later on. And we get the common drops for Closetowar. So no Skygen Ring, no other high rolls. So going to be uneven footing with everybody else after that point. And General Viper. He is yellow. And Glenn has all of our strength accessories, and he's green. And General Viper doesn't have a whole lot of health. So depending on Glenn's stats and your AP roll, this fight can be very anticlimactic.
Yeah, I mean, it's nice to fight the old man, but we gotta put him in his place. Yeah, generally I think there are 3 strategies depending on Glenn's strength, and 2 variations of whether or not he goes first, which he just did. He did attack. And depending on what you get will determine how much time you'll save or lose, but it's all pretty similar, so it's nothing very drastic.
Old man wants to show off a little bit today. Gonna see the G-Force. It's pretty common to skip that unless you've got a bad AP roll. So, a little bit of bad luck from Handy that we got the immediate turn from Viper. But we're just gonna finish him off here pretty soon.
Yeah, the rare drop is a Mithril Mail, which is pretty much useless for the run. We hope to never get it. Because Harley, no spoilers, she's going to come with a Mithril Mail that we're going to make use of for weeks.
Alright, cross your fingers. Dragoon Gauntlet. Dragoon Gauntlet.
Come on.
Oh, that's the mail.
Oh well. It happens. Power Glove curse coming into effect, I tell you.
Given the choice between having the Power Glove or the Gauntlet, you'll take the Gauntlet every time. Given the choice between not even the Power Glove or the Gauntlet, you'll take the Gauntlet every time. Given the choice, not even Power Glove.
But yeah, as Railkun mentioned, even if you don't get the Dragoon Gauntlet, finishing the run is still very possible. Railkun mentioned, even if you don't get the Dragoon Gauntlet, but it just makes it very consistent going forward. All the fights you have to do. Because without it, you have to kind of account for what you don't have anymore. So, but luckily, Superhandi is on the track to having a lot of strength, so he'll be able to, at the very least, balance it out, at least till the end of the game. But that's a long ways off.
Yeah, and like we said, the middle section, strength, and therefore the Gauntlet doesn't matter too much. So if we come into the final section, Handy still has high strength. It'll be all right. It really only becomes a pain if you get to the final section and Surge doesn't have very high strength and you're missing the Gauntlet. Things can become a little bit of a pain, but Andy and Ash have developed a lot of very good backups for low strength strategies for all of the bosses at the end. Some of them can take a while longer, but you can definitely finish the run. This is an interesting fight with Lynx, though, because ideally you want Lynx to attack Surge, because you want to come out of this fight with Surge to have low health.
This fight can be pretty scary. Lynx, I believe, can hit 4 times in a row
Mhm.
and its damage is not insignificant. So you could end up losing 1 or 2 of your party members if you're just unlucky. Oh, that was a nice crit from Glenn.
That's 29 strength leaving Fort Dragonia.
I've had that once. It's amazing. Pendragon Sigil. So Lynx 2 has a chance to drop another Skygen ring. I have not seen it in a while, but the Pendragon Sigil will make use of that later on, is the common drop. So nice that he's able to get it.
Yeah, and if you wind up missing that drop and another Pendragon drop earlier on, it can be a pain to get one, because you need one Pendragon Sigil. At least one. If you miss all of the drops, there's one we can get that's a little bit out of the way. But you want to see at least one throughout the run. I think he got 2, so we're more than fine. So like getting a Skygen ring there would have been kind of nice. Would be a nice boon to our magic user later on. But in this upcoming fight, it's actually really important that you do not heal after that fight with Lynx, because it's one of those classic scripted you must lose RPG encounters. And the best way to do that is if you go in already low health.
Yeah, so even with Lynx 2, if Surge ends up getting knocked out, it's not the worst thing in the world, because he'll start the fight with like 1 or 2 HP, and then you'll have a very, very quick fight afterward.
Yeah, with high HP Surge going to Lynx 2, sometimes it's a little bit tricky, because it's like, do you want to defend? Because then you're going to take less damage, but then the enemies will attack you sooner. Or do you just attack and waste time with the animations, hoping that they hit you hard? Because there's some randomness for the attacks they use and how much damage they're going to do. If you've got like middling HP, sometimes it's a hard decision. But if you got 1 HP, you just hit that defend button, you just sit back and easy fight every time.
So see Andy W is about to finish off Giant Gloop with Frog Prince. And it looks like Closetowar is about to finish off Karsh from the 3 Devas fight. It looks as if they didn't have too much trouble with either of the fights. See what they get.
So we haven't talked too much about the story. We've sort of been talking strategy. At this point, Lynx has switched bodies with Surge. And they don't make it too obvious at first as what's going on until, there's a couple clues in the dialogue. Now everybody's fighting Lynx. Because, hey, that's what we came here to do, is to defeat Lynx, right? And there's going to be some twists and turns, and then we're going to be left on our own as Lynx. All of our party members don't want to come with us because, well, we're the bad guy. And now we're kind of entering the next section of the game that's like, okay, what do we do? How do we get our body back? And then Lynx, in Surge's body, makes a mistake here. Says, don't worry, I'll avenge Luca for you. But Kid hasn't mentioned Luca. This is going back into some of the story we haven't covered yet. Kid was in an orphanage. Turns out the orphanage was run by Luca. And it got burned down. And it was an attempt to actually kill Kid. But Kid escaped. It's implied that Luca is dead, but never said straight up. And now that Lynx is messed up, he has to take out Kid. So once again, Kid is suffering in the speedrun. Shocker.
Yeah, poor Kid.
This one is not our fault. We didn't choose to make this happen. This one always happens at least. So there will be more abandoning Kid later on, though.
Yeah. If anyone's worried about Kid getting stabbed, don't worry. She gets better. See, Andy W is also not going for the bot skip. Very wise choice.
And Lynx here realizes that if he leaves the dragon tier, we could gain our body back. So he's also going to destroy the dragon tier, which is going to make it hard on us. So we're going to have to find another way to get our body back. Because it turns out that Lynx wanted our body in particular. He either wanted us to cooperate with him or lure us here so he could take our body and use it for himself.
Yeah, I know playing this casually, Chrono Cross can be one of the most confusing games, but if you give it time, things become a lot more clear, and at least you can handle the twists and turns they throw at you. But it was an interesting experience.
Yeah, a lot of the deeper meaning in the story is hidden by optional dialogue. If you're playing through and you're just talking to the main characters and watching the story, you're going to be a little bit confused, and they don't explain a lot of the stuff until you talk to other NPCs along the way. Was somebody just talking? All right, seems like we're fine. So now we are in this weird interdimensional space in between worlds. It's not fully explained how we wind up here. Kind of, Link banishes us here. It's like, doesn't think we'll be able to escape. So now we're trying to figure out how to get out of this weird Van Gogh landscape. This is an interesting puzzle. There's a door up here that you can't go in, and the solution is you got to drop a fruit so Sprig comes out. And Sprig is the MVP of this run. She's an old woman, but without Sprig, this run would be terrible.
Sprig is one of those underrated characters because at first glance, she doesn't look like much. But if you ever learn the speedrun, you'll find out just how useful she is. Looks like Closetowar is rapidly approaching where Andy W is gaining time.
Not unexpected at all. Closetowar just seems to be one with Chrono Cross. Even on an even footing, he finds little time saves, gets that good luck here and there. It just seems to happen to Closetowar, He just vibes right with the video game and it vibes right back.
Alright, so with Superhandi, they're going to take Lynx and Sprig on a philosophical journey with Harley. Get to learn about identity and who we are and who we aren't. It's actually quite interesting, and I love the perspective in this upcoming room.
Yeah, this is an interesting section. This can take a while if you don't know what to do, and they don't really explain what you're supposed to do. But once you do the correct things, you can get out of here pretty quickly. Harley's gonna be walking around, entering doors. You need to match what door she's walking into. If you don't get that right, you can wind up with a few extra doors and some extra dialogue from Harley. But in the long run, it's just a little bit of a time loss. It's not like it's gonna end the run or anything.
I always thought those pillars were pencils.
Oh, really? Like with the red eraser on top? I can see that. So there's a little bit of RNG here because Surge is going to walk around the circle, and it's random which door he walks into. So he can go all the way around and walk into the third door, or he can take the first door. So you want to see Surge go in the first door available every time.
Yeah, it can be quite frustrating just to watch Harley, Surge just scuttle along. But you definitely want to see the first door. Normally they give you an average, so it's either 2-2 or 1-3, something like that. Mm-hmm. So you're there. Going for the second.
was 1-2-2. I think the first one isn't random though, so it's just 2-2. And then it turns out that remember when Korcha took that amulet away from us because we didn't want to save Kid, and Harley was invisible in the room. She stole the amulet.
What a thief. We're glad that she did. Now we can do things. Almost.
Maybe, potentially.
Potentially.
So if we want to get our body back, we've got to go to the other world, and that means that we need to go to Opasa Beach. So we've got the amulet. We can switch between worlds. We're gonna head our way over there. Interesting little tidbit here when we land here. Sprig is going to see a little time distortion. They don't really ever let you explore it. You can find some dialogue about it if you go back into the area between worlds again later on. But they never really go into why Sprig sees the distortion or how the world would be different.
And here we get to learn that Sprig is an old lady, because I never thought so, going, like, when I was playing this casually. But Harley points it out. Glad that she did. So listen, old lady, it's no time to party.
Look like Closetowar's tower side went pretty well, and stats are looking pretty good for Closetowar as well. So 26 strength and 20 between Glenn and Surge. Ooh.
Go ahead.
So, got some bad luck there from Son of a Gun on Andy's side. The fatigue landed on Lena, it looked like.
I was about to mention that. Looks like he's struggling a bit. See how he handles it.
It's interesting, because most of the time if this fight goes bad, it's usually faster to run away. Just reset it. But Andy's trying to stick through it. Yeah, and then fatigue landed from meteor shower, so he's gonna have to run away anyway.
Yeah, this is bad. Hopefully they should all survive. And yeah. But a white element on a character, as Evil-Ash pointed out, is sleep or fatigue. And sleep, I believe, is what Kissy Wissy does. That attack.
Okay, yeah. Meteor shower gives fatigue, though, which is a problem, because it means you use more stamina than usual. And he had to fill up a blue field, and it was going to be kind of difficult to do that with fatigue on all three characters. Like, oh my goodness.
So Closetowar was setting up for the bot skip, but he abandoned it at the very end.
I think he was just teasing us with like, hey, I'm going to do bot skip, and then just bails out at the last second, because I think all three of them have done that now.
Maybe they agreed upon it.
They agreed upon which saves to do and how to tease the commentary. Oh no, Closetowar is saying in chat he had the right lineup, but backed off, got nervous. Okay, that's sensible. But Andy getting the Frog Prince off second try this time. Lena has more than enough magic to take out Son of a Gun.
Yeah, so as Lynx entered Arni village, there was a villager at the very beginning who normally stops you and says, you know, your people aren't welcome in our village. But with a manipulation, you can have Harley up front, and then as you go down the bridge, you change your party member so that Lynx is in a different spot, and you can just skip the text. And it's about 8 seconds time save. But it's a 2-part trick, so after this fight with Radius, we're going to have Harley up front again as she exits the village, or the old man will stop you again, or stop you for the first time, and then 8 seconds are gone.
And here is why Sprig is so good. Sprig has an ability called Doppelgang, where if Sprig kills an enemy, she learns that enemy's form, and she can turn into them. And also, you see, it uses stamina. She went negative, but she always goes back to 0 when you use Doppelgang. And this Lagoonit is pretty strong. It's got high accuracy, 89% by default on the strong attacks, and hits pretty reasonably hard. And we're going to get access to another. Sprig is transforming into another creature. We're using set stats. So Sprig's stat gains don't matter at all. When we're using the Lagoonit will always do pretty much roughly the same amount of damage with the small amount of damage variance. And it means that if you've got a pretty low strength run, we can kind of be carried by Sprig here and her transformations for a while until we get the Master Immune and wind up turning into Surge again.
It looks like Superhandi got a decent fight against Radius. If you could defeat him before or after Long Shot, it's really good, because you could skip out on having to see Photon Beam. 26 strength? Wait, no, he's at 30. Lynx is at 30 strength. Pretty incredible.
We got Tarasoid on Closetowar's screen. Looks like it's going fine. We didn't get any trolling with taking out Lena. Frog Prince did a bunch of damage, and yeah, with the high magic, that's enough to just take out Tarasoid there. Meanwhile, Andy over on Bunyip. Bunyip is pretty safe unless you miss an input. It's very hard to get hit by the Inferno unless you miss a very important attack. But usually when that happens, you have more than enough time to run away. So once you learn the Bunyip fight, you're not in danger unless you try to push your luck. And I don't think we'll see the runners pushing their luck here because Inferno is a potential game over. And they haven't saved in a while. So they should all be taking this fight pretty safe.
So we saw on Superhandi's screen that he renamed Radius to a single character, R. Railgun, do you want to explain why we do that?
Yeah, so whenever we're doing these text boxes, it draws the characters 2 letters per frame. And even for the characters that their names don't get said in dialogue very often, if they're a character that speaks up enough, the names at the top of the dialogue box also get drawn like that. So somebody went through, I don't remember who exactly did it, and counted the number of times that people speak and how many times their names are said in text. And every time you can save 2 characters on their name, you save a frame. So the most obvious one to rename to save time is Surge. He is very plot relevant. People say his name constantly. So even though he is the silent protagonist and doesn't speak very often, you can save a lot of time with that. And everybody else just comes down to how often did they speak? Do their names come up? That sort of thing.
This looks like Andy W's about to finish off Bunyip. Normally, unless you have an absurdly high magic value on Lena and like a Skygen ring, this Frog Prince is not enough to take him out. So he'll either elect to use Luminaire or maybe have Lena or Surge attack with a different element.
Yeah, it depends on the HP value. If you know that you just barely missed off on killing him, you just whack him with Glenn or something like that. If you've got more than like 100 or so, using Luminaire is just the safe option. And it's worth mentioning that the renaming thing, even with Surge, you save, I think, 10 seconds throughout the run. If you rename him to S, it's a lot, but also not a huge amount. So even though Handy renamed Surge to S, and Andy and Closetowar memed it up a little bit, they're not giving away huge amounts of time by doing that.
Right. Looks like Superhandy has reached a point in the plot where we get a lot of exposition. And it makes sense because you've just arrived at this world, and you're a Catman, and you have no idea what's going on. So the story will give you bits of what you need to do and where to go a little bit at a time. So it's not so overwhelming. but it's still confusing about why you are the way you are and what you need to do.
Yeah, and we kind of skipped over it, but it turns out Surge cannot go back to the other world because he doesn't have his body, so he doesn't have the connection to the other world. So we're now looking for alternate ways to turn back into Surge so we can go back home. And it's sort of sending us on this long side quest. This is an interesting area because this is where you can get that backup humor we talked about before. If you do this area perfectly, it doesn't take you any time. And there's a couple risky enemy dodges you can go for, or you can just wait for them to get out of your way. So this might be one of the first areas where the players do this differently. No, wait, I'm thinking of the second visit later on.
Yeah, that's in the future.
That's future, yeah.
The section in the future is my least favorite part of the run, and we may see why. Hopefully not, but I don't want to wish bad luck on anybody.
But now we're meeting Norris, and Norris is the hero of the hypothetical not having the Master Immune route. Norris does quite a bit of damage, has good stamina gain, and uses guns, which is important. Because if you pick up Starkey, who is required for the story, you can get access to a very high-powered endgame gun very early on. So if you were to do the route where you do not get the Master Immune, avoid that entire side quest, what you would do is replace that damage by bringing Norris to the party with Starkey's gun and just having him pew-pew with an adorable little laser gun, which is pretty amusing to see the poor military officer shooting a toy gun that goes pew!
One of my favorites as a kid. Still one of my favorite characters in this game. So we see Andy W is facing General Viper, and again, we hope he gets the Dragoon Gauntlet drop. Again, it's, I think, 90% chance to get it. Very likely, but he might get unlucky like Superhandi did. He could just get the Mithril Mail instead.
Yeah, I don't have the compendium. A few of the runners do. It gives the exact drop chances on certain things. Depending on the rare drop, they're around 10% or as low as like 7 or 5%. This one, I think, 90-10 sounds about right, but can't really check easily. So cross your fingers, hope for a gauntlet. It's always nice to see. Andy's stats are pretty good, so wouldn't be the end of the world if Andy doesn't get it.
I think his surge is still lagging. Last I checked, he was at 15 strength, but we're about to see what it's at now.
Yep, and there's the gauntlet.
Nice.
One of the other big stat points that we don't know yet is later on, there's going to be another party member who joins, and we want her to have high magic. If she joins with high magic, it can save a lot of time, but we can't check that at any point until later in the game when she finally joins the party. But as we mentioned at the start of the run, she is passively gaining random stats the entire time throughout the game while everyone levels up. So even characters you have not recruited yet are getting random stat values every time. So they do not join with the same stats every time. It's not consistent. And there's really only one more character we care about their stats. And send good vibes to your favorite runner. Hope that their magic stat for that character is good. Because if you get a good one, you can save a few minutes in the late game.
So Superhandi is continuing the plot, and we had to visit Marbule to talk out with Toma, the Great Explorer, so that we can trigger a plot device, plot trigger, so that we can go to the Zelbas and eventually start the Sage quest.
It's interesting talking to Toma because for most flags in the game, you have to close out all the dialogue boxes for them to actually trigger. But for some reason with Toma, you just have to select a dialogue option, close one text box, and the flag is set. So if you watch when the next people get to Toma, they'll walk up to Toma, hit X a few times, and then they just run away with the text box still on the screen. And that's enough to trigger this next part of the story. It's one of the only instances where that works, actually.
Yeah,
because even though you have access during movement, usually you're just gonna make it bad. That guard coming up here is gonna be the same one.
Yeah, I was about to say that pirate is another example. I like the imagery because it's like he's shouting as you're running down the hallway. Power is justice. It goes on.
It's one of those things where you wonder if, how, especially on these big development studios, you got teams working on different parts of the game. How two of those happen in this same section right next to each other. Maybe that's just like because someone specific was working on the flags in this section of the game and not on the rest of it, So Irene's here is an interesting alternative. She's actually one of the best blue magic casters in the game, but unfortunately recruiting her takes about 40-minute detour. It's awful. It's a fun side quest. You get to watch a rock opera, but 40 minutes is a little bit of a hefty cost for a speed run.
So Andy W is able to finish off Lynx, and he did get the Pendragon Sigil drop, which may or may not be fortunate, but at least he'll be able to make use of that later. And Closetowar is on his way to fight General Viper, so he's not far behind Andy W.
Handy is still cruising. This has been a very solid run for Handy. It's interesting because when you look at the PBs and the experience that Andy and Closetowar have, you'd kind of expect Handy to start falling behind sooner than this. Because, like I said, Handy really only picked this up a couple months ago, but Handy's playing well, getting good luck. It's keeping a lead. So even if Handy, the run turns south later on, if he can keep this lead throughout this middle section, could still have a chance of closing it out for Team Ozzie.
So coming up for Superhandi, we have this gambling game. It's going to involve using a compass as a pointer. So there's a north, south, east, and west. And we bet our boat to Fargo because we want to see the sage, and he won't let us unless we win. So we have a manipulation set up that if Fargo's pointer lands on east, we can easily manipulate to get south to lose, because there's no way to win this game. It's rigged against you so that you can never win. So our goal is to lose as quickly as possible. If it lands on west or north, you can either try to guess, or you could pause buffer and hit a certain area where you can be guaranteed to lose as well. But we'll see what Superhandi gets. West.
He got east. He got the east. He was able to just smash it out. So that was, good luck. But like you said, all it requires is just a couple pause buffers. If you don't get east, it's just a few seconds. Not a big deal. We are getting up to some of the harder things, not right immediately, but some of the biggest time gains or time losses are in this section of the game. You got Miguel, you got Marcy's magic going into Dario. Garai can sometimes troll, but is usually alright. So, as Handy moves through here and we see Andy and Closetowar following behind, this is where we'll probably see some variance and people really gaining or losing time. But we're entering Sneff's magic show. Sneff is one of my favorite characters flavor-wise. He's fun. He's a magician in a world where magic is very real, which is interesting. I just like the idea of him putting on a very traditional, conventional magic show when elements and magic are just an everyday part of life,
Yep. I like that Sneff is one of the kinder characters. So he turns you into a cat, boilers, and he apologizes for it afterward. He's like, I'm sorry that happened. Here, let me give you a cup of tea. Sorry, that's all I could give you because I'm in huge amount of debt, but come back next time. So always like Sneff. He's not particularly strong or useful as a fighter, but interesting character.
Yeah. And of course, when we worry him by running away before he can turn us back from being cats. And he goes and he tries to go gamble, not because he's addicted to gambling or trying to get out of his debt. He wanted some money to buy us cat food. And it's just so cute. Sneff is a wholesome being who must be protected. One of the nice things is that after we get out of here, we make it so that Captain Fargo can't cheat anymore. If you come back later on, you can recruit Sneff by finding out that now that we made it so it's not rigged anymore, he was able to actually win enough to pay off his debt. So he gets a nice happy ending if you come back, and then he'll join your party. But we have no reason to come back to the ship, so we'll just assume that Sneff still pays off his debt and just goes off and enjoys life on his own without us. And Closetowar also got the Dragoon Gauntlet. One of the big trolls that can happen here, we haven't mentioned it yet, is that this Lynx fight, he casts an element. And it's not one of his elements. Lynx will cast one of your elements that you have equipped. And depending on what he casts, it can really mess with this fight. So Superhandi and Andy W haven't really run into a problem with this. So hopefully Closetowar can avoid this as well. Get a clean sweep on Lynx, because I've definitely had him, cast a turn blue or one of the things you need. Or he can use Luminaire. I don't think he uses Luminaire, but I've had him Photon Beam me before and take somebody out. Like, he uses... It can be pretty scary depending on which random element he pulls. But he Bush Bashers instead. That's fine. We're not worried about that. Also, the AP roll seemed to be pretty good. That's really only really scary when Lynx gets an early turn. So with him casting Bush Basher that late, it wouldn't have been too much of an issue. So we have been successfully turned into cats. And we've run away. And we have discovered how Fargo is cheating. And we've stolen the handle to his magnet, which is an interesting way of disabling his cheating. We didn't disable the magnet. We didn't decide to disable the device. We just took the handle. It's a little bit surprising that he doesn't just have, another one. But now Sneff is going to turn us back into humans, or demi-humans, or strange arrangement of human-like creatures. But he says he has to pretend like he's giving a show to do it. So he stands up on the bench and says his whole spiel before he turns us back. Now we are humans again. We have disabled the gambling device, and we're going to challenge Fargo again. We want our boat back, and we want to be able to talk to the sage.
Gotta expose him for the dirty cheater he is.
And here we find Nikki again, who we could have met in Termina. And Nikki is a big key to the whole Marbule side quest with the rock opera and recruiting Irene's. Turns out Nikki is Fargo's son. But Fargo's jaded, and he's had a tough time of his life. His wife died, and he kind of turned away and closed off his emotions, and all of the bad stuff he's doing is just sort of trying to suppress that. But he stole from us, and we're not going to let him get away with that.
Yeah, but one of the most satisfying things casually is to bring the other Fargo, the much better Fargo,
Yeah.
to knock some sense into this one. And I always liked the rock opera as well. I thought that was a very nice touch in the game.
It's a good song,
Theatrical performance.
and it's a fun cutscene. It just takes too long. And there's no RNG associated with this one. Thankfully, Fargo loses immediately, no matter what happens.
And we see Andy W about to go through the doors. So hopefully he gets very quick doors. Just one each. But again, Harley can just strut around, and there's nothing you can do about it. So it's just free time loss for every time she chooses not to enter a door.
Yeah, that's a lot of the RNG in Chrono Cross. Isn't so much the opportunity to gain time, but just to lose time without you being able to do anything about it.
Yeah, luckily it's not too bad. But when you're doing personal best attempts, it can be frustrating, to say the least.
But yeah, if you watch Andy's screen, what Harley says, how boring, let's go back to reality. That's what she says when you do it correctly. If you go through the wrong doors, take a few extra steps, she'll talk a little bit more about philosophical, what it means to be you. Is it you who you are inside your head, or is it your body? What's more important? That kind of stuff.
Yeah, so Superhandy's about to talk and fight the Sage. This is one of the few instances in the game in the speedrun where choosing a different option other than the default for text saves time. By saying no, or it's nothing, you end up saving about 4 seconds of time. So it's nice. And the Sage fight itself is not too bad. The only thing to note is that there's a chance that her drop, which is a mithril helmet, there's a chance that they won't get that drop. And it can be good or bad, but like most of these fights, Sprig will start us off trying to get to level 5 for a doppelgang, and then just going to do some element shenanigans to build up the Lagoonate, take out the Sage, no problem, hopefully.
Yeah, and we should hopefully be getting close to the point where we get something a little better than the Lagoonate. And I think the worst thing the Sage can do is, Sage is one of those enemies that can just do a long combo, hit you with the broom like 5 times before you get a turn again. Just waste some time. It's not really a scary fight. If it goes long, it can be like Sage can take out Harley or Lynx, but you're not really going to wipe on this fight.
Right, that's kind of the theme for most of the boss fights in this game, is we don't want them to last longer than they need to, because a lot of them end up becoming either extremely frustrating or time-consuming, or just plain dangerous, where you can wipe, and in a speedrun where you don't save at all, that's it, that's all you get. But luckily we're going to have some save points scattered throughout the run to assure the runners that they won't encounter such a bad fate.
I think the next agreed upon save is before Miguel, which is very understandable. There's a pretty good safe backup for that one, but sometimes Miguel can still go badly, especially if a fatigue lands at a point where you don't want it to land, and you've had some bad luck leading up to there. But like Corporate said, ideally in this speedrun, you just never save, because for the most part, if you know this game pretty well, you know the route, you can recognize when a boss fight is going poorly and just run away before you're in danger of dying. So once you've done this run enough times, there's no real reason to save except for maybe before the Dragon God.
Right. I saw Superhandi. He did not get the mithril helmet drop, unfortunately. It's not such a big deal. It's just an item that will be equipped to a character later on. But it's still kind of off-putting when it happens to you, because I thought it was always a guaranteed drop. I was wrong.
The drop table is like chance to drop an item. Most enemies is 100%. And then once they drop an item, it's rare or common. Some don't even have a rare drop. Some are just like chance to drop an item. And then you get the one item if they do. So we are finally able to get to the Dead Sea, which is our goal, because we've been told getting to the Dead Sea, we can figure out a way for us to get our body back, or at the very least to travel back to the other world. But it's a JRPG, and we're only a few, not quite halfway through, but that means it's not going to be that easy to just go to the Dead Sea and that fixes everything. There's always going to be more steps involved.
Going to the Dead Sea for the first time is one of the more interesting parts of this game, because so far we've gotten this motif, this theme of beaches and ocean and mountains and nice towns and such. And then we go there and it's like, what? It's just so strange and so different from what we're used to seeing that it's really off-putting.
Mhm.
They lead you into it, giving you bits of information to allow it to make sense. But I was always found that very jarring when I was little.
So the only way through is this cave leading into the cove behind it, and this is our introduction to the Mastermune, or sorry, the Masamune.
Awesome.
It turns out that in the time since Chrono Trigger, the influence of the Masamune has been corrupted, and what it does is it draws out the negative feelings from people and strengthens them. And it's been placed here in our way as a barrier because we can't really go past it, this evil influence. So Radius tells us we need the holy sword, the Einlanzer, to be able to defeat the Masamune and pass through to our destination. But the Einlanzer was buried with Garai, and we're going to have to go to his grave to fetch it. But Radius doesn't really want to do this because of his past with Garai, and he's going to have to stop and think about it for a bit. And we'll see a little bit about the effect that the Masamune has on people with some cutscenes coming up.
I always liked Radius. He's my favorite character now that I'm an adult, because he has such an interesting depth of character, what he's gone through in the past, what he's going through now. And he serves as a nice counterpoint to Karsh, because they go through very similar things, but they treat their situation differently. But with this section, Radius he's getting caught up, and he wants to make amends for what happened, but he is a bit vague on what he did wrong.
Mm-hmm.
Well, we're about to see this flashback, and I like pointing this out. Garai, this giant of a man who's like 12 feet tall, does this amazing feat where he crosses his arms while holding two swords. I can't stop looking at it when it happens, but I just have to point it out. Crosses it, laughs, and goes on.
So it turns out that Radius was the fourth Deva of the Dragoons at one point. And Garai was another one of the Devas. And they found the Masamune, which they didn't realize was evil at this point. It's just a powerful sword. Radius is happy to find it. And I was explaining the effect that it has on people. And he's going to be a little bit cagey and not really tell us the rest of the story yet. Interesting thing here is that the trigger to move on is actually talking to Radius when he comes out of the hut. So you see that Superhandi follows him up here, dancing around, letting Harley have some time in the spotlight. And you just got to wait for him to reappear. It's fantastic. Favorite thing in JRPGs is standing here waiting.
Yep.
And then he even says, sorry to keep you waiting. Like, they knew.
Yeah, but without waiting up here, Radius would literally walk through you, even if you were on the top deck, and just go down the ladder. So by meeting him up here and mashing X or R1, you skip some of the time that would be associated with walking. But going forward on Superhandi's screen, Harley is going to be the star of the show. We have some encounters, and she's going to be hopefully hitting everything and getting some good luck.
So this is an introduction to enemy types and certain weapons. So Harley uses a ranged weapon, and it's a mithril ranged weapon. And the enemy type that these will-o-wisps are means that if she uses a 3, she will auto-crit. And there's a lot of enemy formations we can see here. And this one isn't too bad. It's on the worst luck end. But that was scary there because they used Magma Burst, confused Sprig, but then immediately took a turn, hit Sprig, and broke the confusion, which is very nice.
Nice.
But Harley's magic here can be nice, because if she's got high magic, she can blast through these encounters, because there's a couple forced encounters here. Do quite a bit of damage with that Moonbeams. Her magic seems reasonable, not really high, not really low. Seems about average. But if you get a high roll on Harley here, you can save quite a bit of time here, because there's sort of a puzzle area when you defeat these overworld enemies, they kind of do a fire burst. Oh, Sprig got confused again.
Oh no. Yeah, Confusion is a lot like Berserk and other games where your party member will just attack randomly whoever until they get attacked themselves. It's very good.
But the whole goal is you want to lure these enemies to an area, defeat them, and then they'll explode and open up a pathway for you. That's important because there's an optional enemy coming up that we want to fight later in this dungeon using these enemies.
Yeah, one of the most important encounters in the run.
These drops are also interesting because if you get a fire pillar here, you can go for a strategy in a later difficult fight. Try and get a burn. We've talked a little bit about the status effects and what they do, but burn is an interesting one because if you successfully burn an enemy, you actually remove some of their defensive stats. So if we get lucky and get a fire pillar instead of a fireball from this second will-o-wisp fight, super handy could potentially try and burn a difficult boss coming up to save a little bit of time.
Oh yeah, the drop is Inferno, and then I think the common is Fire Pillar.
Yep.
But both of them have a chance of burning an enemy, as you mentioned. And I think Fire Pillar is 20% chance, and then Inferno is 50, but that's the rare drop.
Mm-hmm.
So seeing an Inferno is a very good thing, because it kind of gives you some assurance for a fight coming up, well, in a couple hours.
So the whole goal here is you want to lure the will-o-wisp down next to this statue, because it turns out that it's not a statue. It's just an enemy that's sort of frozen here. So instead of opening up a pathway when we defeat the will-o-wisp next to it, it will trigger a fight for us. And this is our only opportunity to fight this enemy. So we have to be pretty careful because we want Sprig to get the killing blow. Because until we find the Forget-Me-Not pot, the only way for Sprig to learn a transformation is for Sprig to kill the enemy. And if Sprig is transformed, she can't learn the transformation. So it's an interesting fight because we gotta set up this encounter so we can get this enemy very low health and have Sprig finish it off without being transformed. And kind of the counterpoint to balance Sprig out is that when she's in her normal form, when she's not transformed, she's pretty weak. But we found a pretty consistent way to get through this fight now.
Yeah, it's not 100%. Every now and then you get a really weak Harley and Sprig with low magic. And when that happens, you just have to take time and just whack the White Knight with Sprig and hopefully knock it out pretty quickly. But without the Doppelgang ability, most of this run going forward is not possible. Because the White Knight is just such a good Doppelgang ability, and it makes the fights consistent and quick. Yeah,
and since this is a rare enemy you can only fight once, it's a very strong enemy. Doppelganging into it is just very powerful. If you were curious what we were going to say, Sprig was going to carry this part of the game, but you were seeing the Lugunit kind of not being amazing, just kind of good, this White Knight will be why. One of the interesting things, though, and why some of the upcoming fights are dangerous, is the White Knight is Black Elemental. So that means when Sprig turns into the White Knight, we're going to have Harley, who's Black Elemental, Lynx, who's Black Elemental, and a White Knight, who's Black Elemental. And there's a couple pretty difficult white innate bosses coming up who are infamous for being very difficult. So we have to have some safety strats to make sure that they can't just wipe us in some of the later boss fights.
So, before I knew anything about the White Knight, when I came here casually, like recently, several months ago, I saw the suit of armor, and I thought, oh, there's a character who doesn't wear armor, it's Zoa. I bet if I bring him here, we're gonna get this rare suit of armor for him. So it didn't happen. So, luring the will-o-wisp is the correct answer, being able to fight the White Knight. And as Ryokun mentioned before, there's only one of these enemies in the game per playthrough. It's very important that with this photon beam finishes it off, hopefully.
Yep, and that golden tiara we got for killing it is also important because it sells for something like 75,000 gold. It is so much that it means we're set on money for the rest of the game. It's to the point where when we go to a shop later on to buy some elements, it's faster to hit right and buy 11 than it is to buy like the 4 that we need.
Yeah, so for the most part, our money route throughout the whole game is not very tight, but after the Golden Tiara, we have no more money troubles. So that's a very welcome thing for the speed run. So we'll have a few more shopping trips before we just finish the game.
So we're approaching the grave of Garai, so we can try and claim the Einlanzer, and the angry spirit appears, and we learn the rest of the flashback of what happened to Radius. Radius was always jealous of Garai because he was just a better swordsman than him. So when he was holding the Masamune, it amplified those feelings, and he felt that this was his chance to finally surpass Garai. He lost his mind a little bit and attacked him from behind and killed him with the Masamune, and was never able to undo it. Has always felt bad about it. He left the Dragoons afterwards. He went off to Arni village to lead a quiet life away from battle because he no longer trusted himself to have power, and instead wound up sort of heading up that village and guiding the small town, protecting them, sort of thing.
Yeah, gotta appreciate the character depth. And Radius was Surge's mentor, I believe, teaching him how to wield the swallow. Alright, Garai, a very scary fight. Typically, he'll interrupt, or he won't interrupt at the very start. Briggs attacks.
We want to see some crits from White Knight in this fight.
Yeah.
Some White Knight crits will make this very easy. Later on, we don't want to see crits, but this one we do. White Knight crits do a lot of damage, and hopefully you'll be able to see just how much. And this is what we were talking about before, diminish. Now that we have White Knight, all that power is just in physical attacks. So now this triple cut is going to do half damage. And everyone in the party is Black Elemental, so that would have hurt a lot without that diminish. But it's also less than 50% because it added a black element onto the field.
Yep.
So we cut the power of all elements, and we then weakened white elements a little bit. So it's closer to like 40% power there with the one black on the field. I don't know the exact number, but you see the 350-ish damage should be about what we'll see. And if we get a crit, then you can get just under 500 hitting Garai with the White Knight. It is just piles and piles upon damage from Sprig here. And this is why, even though this is one of the more difficult sections of the game casually, Sprig just carries us. And it's good because it means we can avoid recruiting some additional party members that you might normally want to have in a casual playthrough.
Yeah, and to anyone who's interested in learning the run, both Garai and Miguel are kind of scary, to say the least. But you can always expect one of the two, or both of them, to knock somebody out in one of the fights. You hope it's not Lynx, so there you go. Harley got knocked out. I hope it's not Lynx or the White Knight. But if that does happen, you could either choose to revive or just continue the fight and not accept the level up afterward. So don't feel too badly if that happens to you, because I know it can be nerve-wracking.
Yeah, Harley is the best case scenario to get knocked out because she's not sticking around long term, and we've got everything we need from Harley at this point. That's why we equipped a bunch of support elements onto her. She's got the diminish.
Oh, I see. Andy W got the East, the immediate... Wait, I thought he did. Oh, never mind.
Were you looking at the white side, not the red side, maybe?
I thought possibly, yeah. It's hard to see, but landed on East. Oh well.
Mm-hmm.
Finished it.
So now we have the Einlanzer. We can go open the way to the Dead Sea, and this will be an interesting encounter. And we're leading up to the next. Everyone has agreed to save here because this boss is dangerous moment at the end of the Dead Sea.
Oh yes, yeah. The Highwayman coming up. is a boss not to be underestimated, in addition to Miguel as well. But
Yeah. Highwayman is an interesting one. Like, he's not going to wipe you, but he can waste so much time if he's feeling mean.
yeah, that's one of those fights that, as it drags on, gets worse. And that's mostly because we can be blinded, so our accuracy drops quite a bit. We do have backups for it, though, if that happens. But yeah, we want to finish that fight as quickly as possible. See, Superhandi got an encounter there, an unintentional encounter. Every one of those costs about 20 seconds, assuming you can run away from the encounter immediately.
Yeah. I don't think we mentioned this yet, but we talked about random AP rolls. Bosses cannot get an AP roll of 0. Random enemies can. So that means that at the start of a fight with a random enemy, they can take a turn first, but a boss can never do that. Some bosses will roll with 1 AP, so they'll interrupt you instantly, but you always have the first strike or the first action. And we haven't talked about it in a little bit, but now that we've got the White Knight, it's going to become much more important. The whole concept of delaying enemy turns. So just to cover quickly again, every enemy has a counter in the background, and as you use AP, it counts down. When they reach 0, they're going to take a turn. But when you're using physical attacks, you look on the left, they will appear as, I think it's red, and then turn white as they're executed. The little marks showing which attacks you're queuing up. If the enemy hits 0 AP, but you have another attack queued up, you will always get at least one more attack out before they get their turn. So one of the big strategies is you get them to 1 AP, you hit them with a 3, which puts them to -2, and then you mash out a second 3 so that it delays them to -5 before they actually get their turn. And it's just a way to squeeze out some extra damage before they get their turn. Make enemies get less turns overall, and we call that stamina pushing.
Right. It's a bunch of free damage that not only is nice, but eventually becomes necessary for a lot of bosses later on. And you'll see most of the fights where Sprig starts off. She'll either do like a 1-1-1-2 or a 2-2-1. And we choose those numbers to account for the enemies with higher AP or lower AP. Because we don't know when they're going to go. They won't go immediately, but they could still start at 1.
Yeah, that was probably a 1 AP start because the that got interrupted so fast.
And a lot of the fights with Sprig, if you're able to like get off all of your attacks and then doppelgang into the White Knight, you can deal extra damage to whatever enemy you're going up against. So in this case, the Highwayman is a great one to be able to do that, but because he got interrupted, we'll just have to deal with the standard strategy of taking him out.
And we've seen a lot that status effects are kind of a random chance, but depending on what attack it is, the chance of applying a status effect is different. So the exhaust attack that's going to be applied later on, that has a chance to apply darkness, has a very high success rate. Ideally, we want the darkness to miss White Knight and Lynx. Don't really care if it hits Harley, but it's almost always going to hit one or even both of them. So the Highwayman is black though, so we are going to use a turn white on the White Knight. White Knight is now black and white, and there's a white on the field, so White Knight will just do a little bit increased damage. This guy has a bunch of health. You're not really going to be able to skip through unless you get like a bunch of crits really early on. I think I saw once in testing, got like 3 crits or something absurd.
You can see Harley, she's building up to use Panacea, just in case the White Knight gets blinded. Not only does it cure the blindness, but it puts another white element on the field so that the White Knight will be able to do a little extra damage. Looks like she's using it, yeah.
And Lynx not getting blinded there is nice, because sometimes a little bit of extra damage from Lynx can be enough to skip an enemy turn, depending on how the AP works out. Rampage goes off here. If that hits White Knight, it can take the White Knight out. So glad that it hits Harley instead. One of the big weaknesses of the White Knight, despite being a giant powerhouse, has pretty good physical defense, but not much HP. And one of the things that's easy to underestimate is the fact that the White Knight's stats will not improve. So as we keep using the White Knight, still going to be doing good damage, but is still going to be sitting at 229 HP, and that's going to become increasingly less and less HP in comparison to the amount of damage these bosses can dish out.
It looks like the fight went a little longer. There was a miss from the White Knight, and that caused the Highwayman to get an extra turn in, so that ended up losing a few seconds. But still a great fight, and it's always nice to see that. You don't have to spend several minutes running away, trying again, or just getting the very unfortunate wipe.
If you look back at Closetowar and Andy W, they're still pretty close. Could wind up seeing Closetowar passing Andy at this rate if it keeps getting good luck and, gaining on him. But Superhandi is really holding his own quite well. Has a solid lead and is moving through the middle section of the game. There is a point where if Handy can keep this lead intact for long enough, or that even a bad endgame, he should be able to guarantee a win for his team. But like I said, we're coming up on the hard parts. The ones where you can really lose huge amounts of time into things going bad. So we will see if Handy can keep this lead going, but Miguel is going to be the first big test on where you can potentially lose a bunch of time.
Yeah, right. In addition to that, as opposed to the fights you have to deal with, like Miguel, but also bits of RNG that you'll have to deal with. And depending on how lucky you get, you end up not losing any time or even saving some time, but you could also lose several minutes of time. So even though Superhandi has a comfortable lead right now, it's not set in stone. And it won't be set in stone for a very long time who has the lead.
If it turns out that Marcy's been rolling low magic in the background this entire time, you can lose a significant portion of time on Dario just from having Marcy join your party at low magic. And there's just not anything you can do about that. It's just one of the unfortunate things about that is you can't check her magic at any point up into your either. So you can't be preparing, you can't be thinking of how you want to go into that fight, you can't be thinking of backup strats. You just gotta get Marcy into your party, look at her magic, and go, oh dear.
Those ghostly ladies are some of the worst enemies you can get an encounter with. They end up talking and saying nonsensical terms and using trap elements for 2 minutes before you run away. So definitely want to step carefully around them, but no troubles for Superhandi.
Those are some of the enemies I was talking about earlier where if they're in the way, it is not worth trying to dodge them at all. You stand there even for 40 seconds to let them get out of the way. Just, you don't want to mess with getting those as a random encounter.
Yeah, I learned the hard way.
So one of the interesting things here is that we thought we were going to Chronopolis, but we're in the Dead Sea. And we talked about Chronopolis earlier in the run, kind of giving an overview for the story. But the Dead Sea is sort of a result of all of these timelines. And what happens is when a timeline gets overwritten, when something happens that makes that no longer the future, well, that future has to go somewhere. And it lands here in the Dead Sea. And this is why the Acacia Dragoons vanished in this world, because they went off to the Dead Sea looking for the Frozen Flame, and they kind of got frozen in time here. So we see Radius and... not Radius, we see General Viper and his 3 Devas just sort of frozen in time here. And we start seeing these images of Chrono, Marl, and Luca. And they'll be talking to us a little bit. And talks a little bit about how, because of Chronopolis going back in time and altering the timeline, how in this alternate timeline that Chrono Cross is happening in, Lavos doesn't actually wind up getting defeated. So this, section of the end of the game in Chrono Trigger where you see Lean's spell is sort of ruined and sitting in disrepair because in this alternate timeline that we're exploring, this didn't actually wind up coming to be, and this But most importantly is this chest on the back corner. This screwy dress is once again the key to being able to make it through a large section of the game, because we can disassemble that into some very powerful materials.
Yeah, to note, in the speed run, we generally don't pick things up or go out of our way for items, but the ones that we do are very useful. So, as Railkin mentioned, by disassembling the screwy dress, we get the stone element, Denadorite, which we're not supposed to get for quite a while, and we're able to upgrade Lynx's weapon so that he's doing a significant amount of more damage. So, very nice.
Yeah, so we see Nadia's bell, but it's like broken and it won't be heard again. And then we find Miguel. And Miguel is Lena's father. So going back a bit and talking about some of the story we haven't really talked about too much, because it doesn't really become important until this point, is that when Surge was a kid and he was nearly killed by the Panther Demon, both Miguel and Surge's father took him onto a boat to try and take him to Termina so that he could see a doctor. But they got blown off course by a storm and wound up in the Dead Sea. They wound up in Chronopolis, and that's how Surge came into contact with the Frozen Flame when he was a kid in his own timeline. But Miguel wound up getting trapped here in the Dead Sea afterwards. And he's warning us because the computer system that runs Chronopolis, Fate, is very powerful and has its plans. And if we continue along this path, we're going to have to clash with Fate. And he doesn't think that we are strong enough to do it. So we're getting a situation similar to Fargo earlier, where if we're truly going to stand up and try to fight Fate, we need to prove it. And this is a very scary fight.
Yeah, and it's one of those fights where normally you want to do a huge amount of damage, get all your crits out, but with Miguel, you want to keep his HP at a certain range. You don't want him to enter critical mode too soon, because he responds with, I think, Meteor Shower, an AoE white elemental attack. And so in case Superhandi gets a crit early on, he's going to have to be careful. But
the Meteor Shower is not just a powerful AoE element, but as we saw earlier when Andy W kind of messed up the Son of a Gunfight, has a very high chance to apply fatigue.
Yep.
Which makes the fight go south very fast. Because suddenly you're using double the stamina, which means you're not recovering your stamina as fast. You run out of stamina to keep using physical attacks before Miguel will die, and then he's going to continue to pummel you with extremely high power white elements if you can't finish him off because of the fatigue. So you really, really do not want to see that Meteor Shower land on you. Not just because it's dangerous and can kill you, but because it can lead to the fight just spiraling out of control. This is also an opportunity where you can get a game over from a text option. Miguel is telling you that you should give up and stay here with him. It's not that bad of a life to live here. It's out of the way and a little bit lonely, but he'd like your company. And if you accept, you get a game over screen.
Gotta love that when RPGs do that, or at least give you the option to do that. Because the developers had a sense of humor sometimes.
So this is an important part. He's going to open up with an anti-black, and if he uses this on Harley, we have to back up.
Okay, good. Yeah, if anti-white hits Harley, it ends up costing a little bit of time, but it's not the end of the world, because we're going to we need Harley to use Diminish. It's one of the key points for the Miguel fight.
It's like I mentioned earlier, it's been a while. Diminish and Magnify both buff and nerf the magic damage from elements. And Miguel is rough and he's going to use Magnify, but if you use Diminish first, it takes precedence. So now that Diminish is being used here in a second by Harley, all elements will be reduced by 50%. And the Magnify that Miguel uses is just not going to work. It's not going to do anything. But it's also important because this Holy Dragon Sword would completely blow us up.
Yeah.
I think he only uses the Magnify before Meteor Shower, so ideally you never see the Magnify for it to become a problem, but without that Diminish, if he targets White Knight with the Holy Dragon Sword like that, he's just dead. But now White Knight's very low health, we do not want to see him get targeted. Oh. And this is dangerous, because Revive is a white element. So now we have a full white board. Also, having White Knight get attacked clears the Strengthen. So White Knight is doing less damage on a white board. And ooh, here comes the Meteor Shower. Oh, this will not wipe us. But White Knight's going to die to this. And we're probably going to have to reset the fight.
It's Miguel doing Miguel things. Let's see here.
We did get Fatigue on Lynx as well. This is dangerous. He's trying to finish this out. If he's been counting the HP properly, this should be safe. But I have not been counting the HP, and I do not know if Superhandi has this. This was one of the agreed upon save points, was right before Miguel.
Yeah.
But if you die here and you have to reload, you have to watch all that text again, which is much slower than just running away.
Yeah, this is interesting. I think you might use Harley to go for Moonbeams. So level for level 3.
Mm-hmm.
Or he's just gonna heal up to be safe. Yeah, Miguel is close. I think he's within like 150, 200. But yeah.
Holy Light's scary there, but doesn't do a whole lot of damage because the field isn't white anymore. And there we go. Is able to finish it off. That's probably a backup strat that's only possible because Superhandi's strength is pretty high on Lynx. If you had a low strength Lynx, you wouldn't even mess with that. You would just run away, reset the fight, and try again.
Yeah, 34 strength. Doing really well.
So that's probably a good audible by Handy. Like I said earlier, I did a lot of the initial routing for this game. Other people have come through and made very good strats for what to do if your strength is high or low. So I wouldn't have messed with that, but I also ran the game much less, so I didn't know, I wouldn't have the confidence to do that. So that was intelligent by Handy. He made it work. Saved time over having to run away, most definitely. It was just scary because I wasn't counting HP and I didn't know how close Miguel was.
Yeah, well done for Superhandi. I know I would have run away. It's a very nice panic button when things go poorly, but it would have cost a lot of time to have to redo the fight.
Mm-hmm. For sure. And Miguel, before we fight, said, "You better come at me with your entire soul, or you're not going to survive." And he meant it. He went hard. So, in order to defeat Miguel, we had to kill him, which is, put some Bible thumps in chat, because that's the father of our best friend growing up that we just had to fight and kill, and now he's telling us in his dying words what we need to do to keep going.
I always believed you could one day, or somehow, bring Lena with you and convince Miguel to join your party. But no. Just have to watch him die.
And now Chronopolis has realized that we're here and what we're trying to do. The fate that controls Chronopolis has figured that out and is now trying to erase the Dead Sea while we're in it to get rid of us. Because what's important is that, as Miguel explained, we came into contact with the Frozen Flame when we were a child, and that means that we're now the key. Everyone else who came into contact with the Frozen Flame was either erased or frozen in time or just completely destroyed. But for some reason, Surge was accepted by the Frozen Flame, and he is the only person who can interact with it safely. But that means that Surge is the only person who can use the Frozen Flame to stop Fate's plans. So Fate does not want us to escape, and is now attempting to completely destroy this place or move it from the timeline with us here to keep us from being able to stop Fate.
I saw on Andy W's screen, at least this encounter was a very good one. I think it was just 2 will-o-wisps, and he had a good fight with Harley. And as the White Knight fight went without a hitch, he might be gaining some time on Superhandi.
Yeah.
Encounters can cost quite a bit of time if you get bad luck.
It looks like he's actually pulled a little bit away from Closetowar as well. As Andy is watching the second part of the Radius flashback, and Closetowar just finished the first part. So Andy W doing a pretty good job over there. On Superhandi's screen, the Sky Dragon shows up and rescues us as the Dead Sea is being destroyed. And the dragons are a pretty big plot point that we basically haven't been introduced to. We've met the Fire Dragon. There's a side quest to meet the Water Dragon. But the Sky Dragon is the first forced instance of meeting the dragons. And we're not really going to understand their importance until later, but what the Sky Dragon does is rescues us as the Dead Sea is destroyed. And after having met the Sky Dragon, we're actually able to go back to Opasa Beach and switch between worlds again. Because the Sky Dragon notices we're trying to fight against fate and is going to lend us some assistance.
Yeah, what a nice dragon. Helping us out. Nothing suspicious there.
Yeah, nothing at all.
Just sons of man and Sprig. Actually, is nobody human in our party?
Yes, that's correct.
Nope.
We have a full demi-human party with this, which is pretty amusing.
Yeah, sons of man indeed.
Slight spoilers there, but yes, Harley is not human. We'll explain it later on. But now that we can go back to the other world, there is a second dragon tier back in our home world. And that's where, back in the other world, sorry. And that's where we want to go. We want to get to the dragon tier because we can use that to try and get our body back.
Yeah, so we see Andy W starting up the Garai fight. Looks good so far. Just like Miguel, this fight can go south pretty quickly, but generally it's a lot safer. I would say it's a lot safer than the fight.
Because Garai's attacks are mostly single target, very powerful.
Yep.
If it goes bad, he's going to kill somebody and you just run away. Whereas if Miguel goes bad and you're low HP and he throws out a big AoE, you can wipe. So you're never really... As long as you're counting HP and you know what you're doing, you're not really in danger against Garai. You can see he just chunked Harley really hard with just the physical attacks. Like, didn't even use his special attack just yet. If he attacks multiple times, he hits very hard and can just kill you with his physical attacks on top of having some hard-hitting elements.
It looks like Closetowar got a good encounter as well. 2 will-o-wisps are what you want to see.
Oh yeah, that's the best RNG for the will-o-wisps is just the 2. Especially since if you 3-3 with Harley and get lucky, she'll kill him with the auto-crits. It's usually worth going for it, because Harley doesn't do much damage except when she crits there. So if you get it, it's nice. If you miss, it's not a big deal. The others can clean it up. It's just it's a good risk-reward play to go for those 3-3s with Harley.
Yes, so before Opasa Beach, Superhandi was able to upgrade the Swallow, which is Lynx's weapon, to a Stone Swallow, which I believe auto-crits machine type enemy.
Yes. Stone weapons in general, auto-crit machines. It's a property of the stone weapons, which is interesting, but... I think the story is that it's not just stone, it's like this special type of mineral, denodorite, which is pretty rare. So now we have returned back to our home world for the first time. We get a nice little fourth wall break from this random villager NPC, looks directly at us and goes, "Boy, am I in a pickle!" It's kind of similar to like Looney Tunes sort of thing. I've always appreciated this little guy.
So I always thought that Harley or whoever calls the kid a nuisance. You are a nuisance. And because they kind of lean forward in front of the kid's ear. And, oh well, perspective is a thing.
But it turns out while we were gone, the poor military has invaded and taken over the El Nido Triangle. Because in this alternate timeline, the poor military became a huge force. They had a bit of a war, and they wound up winning. It's implied that during this war, Chrono vanished. Suggested to be dead, but left open for interpretation. And one of the interesting things, though, is as we saw in the Dead Sea, Lynx had been working with the poor military to try and get to the Dead Sea to get to the Frozen Flame. So even though the poor military has taken over, us being Lynx is going to be useful for the first time ever. In that we're going to walk in a termina, an occupied termina under a military, and they're going to see Lynx, and we have rank. So we can get some favors done by being Lynx.
This is the third and final time through the Fossil Valley. It's also the most difficult time to get through. There are 3 enemies that can get in your way, but the real problem is the last one, because that guy with the spear likes to hide in the loading zone and sometimes pops out if you try to go through it. But Superhandi had no trouble getting around those enemies.
So now we're going to meet up with Karsh and Zoa, and we're going to get a choice on letting one of them join our party. And it's very important that we take Karsh, because we're going to get the other one later on, but Karsh is required for the Master Immune side quest, and we want to get the Master Immune as soon as possible. It requires fighting an extremely difficult boss that we shouldn't really be fighting at this point, but we're going to have a fun strategy we'll explain later on to be able to take on Dario much sooner than we should be able to.
So you could see around the pedestal in the center of the room, the glowing material on the ground. That's the Shattered Dragon tier. I love that Karsh just said, hey Marcy, pick it up. Pick all of it up. Considering there are like, I don't know, a couple thousand shards.
Yeah.
Tell her to do.
And the funny thing is that she obeys.
Yeah.
Because Marcy's character up to this point has been she's a brat. She's very self-centered and doesn't listen to other people. She does what she wants to do, but Karsh can tell her what to do, and she does. Now, the important question is, it's not going to be for a while. When Zoa gets recruited, how many party members do you think are going to rename him to all caps? I always do it for events. I know a few other runners do it. It's a fun thing to do.
Yeah, that's his proper name. You gotta yell it. Shout it to the world.
So now we run into the other Norris, who recognizes us and says, Sir Lynx, which is interesting, because, like, Norris is commanding this detachment here outside of the Viper Manor. So Norris has rank. I think it's a lieutenant rank, but is referring to Lynx as Sir Lynx and acting as if Lynx is a superior to Norris. So it's hinting that Lynx had a very high position in the poor military, and I think it's explained later on that Lynx is the reason the poor military invades, had the idea to invade the El Nido Triangle to begin with. So we've got Highwayman going on over on Andy W's screen. Rampage going off. Hopefully does not kill White Knight. Gonna use it after these 3/3s. It hits White Knight and barely does enough damage. Oh, that's unfortunate.
Yeah. I was talking about earlier, if you get a good AP roll with a Highwayman, you can do a little extra damage at the start, which normally will let you skip that whole Rampage attack. But sometimes you just get unlucky. But it shouldn't be too much of a problem for Andy W. It's about to finish him off.
Oh, the double miss. Very nice. If the Highwayman had attacked White Knight enough times and done high damage, that could have killed White Knight again. Really drag this fight on. So what we're talking about, how Highwayman isn't really dangerous, but can just waste a lot of time. It can give the darkness, make you have to heal it. It can kill White Knight with a rampage, and then attack you and take out White Knight again. You have to slowly kind of grind away the last bit of health with Lynx, and it's just not fun. You're not going to have to run away. It's just going to take forever, especially if Lynx has blind as well, you know?
Yep. Yeah, so it looks like Andy W, his Lynx is sitting at about 26 strength, which is about average. You hope it's a little bit more because where Superhandi is, he's about to enter the sewers, is where Lynx's strength will start to play in to how quick or how slow fights will be.
Mm-hmm.
And Superhandi is sitting pretty. I think he's got 34, at least 34 strength. So he should just be able to blaze through most of the fights here with little issue.
Yeah, it's one of those things where if you got low strength, it's not the end of the world. You can still get through it using White Knight, but having high strength on Lynx will be just a nice time gain.
Yeah.
Especially if you get a crit on some of these fights, you can skip a turn. If you've got a high strength going into one of the machine enemies coming up, it can go very fast. You can do a 3-3 glide hook and just end it before it even gets a turn if you've got high strength on Lynx.
Yeah, so entering the sewers, it's my least favorite part of the run, personally. Sewers themselves, the puzzle that's associated with it isn't so difficult once you learn how to do it, but the enemies in there, they are real jerks, real trolls.
This is what I started to talk about earlier when I forgot that was a revisit we need to talk about, is that these enemies have a bigger hitbox than it looks like, and a lot of these pathways are pretty narrow. So if they stand in that pathway, they can get it in your way and you just have to wait. So if you got good movement here from Superhandi, and if he still needs one more humor, there's a chest here you can pick it up from, and if you push these two barrels, run up, grab the chest, you can get back to the bridge before the second barrel arrives. So that doesn't actually cost any time to grab that humor. Hopefully we'll see good movement and show that off here. It's not too difficult, just need a little bit of practice to do this consistently, and yeah, there we go. See him waiting there at the bridge. So that humor, even though it's a bit out of the way, it doesn't cost any time to pick up.
Right. Another thing to note, throughout the game, certain enemies that you run away from, as they stand out in the overworld map, some of them, you can run straight through them. It's like they have transparency or you have iframes. But these enemies and a few others, if you're on a path, like a collision course, and there's no other way around them, you have to wait for them to go. So avoiding an encounter is always preferable than hitting it and trying to run away, of course. But in particular, these sewers with the narrow corridors and everything, it becomes a real pain because you can get trapped pretty easily, and you might end up having to fight the trolls. And it's the big taste.
If you look above Superhandi, we're going to be passing by a chest that is a very powerful item that we routed out, particularly because of that reason, and also a little bit of backtracking required. And then, right as you finish explaining that this guy is going to block our path, if he turns around, that'll be awful. Okay, no, we're fine. Because the enemies don't really have set paths. If they decide to block that pathway, they can just turn around, and then you have to back up and wait for him to get out of your way.
Yeah. Let's see. So Closetowar, he's started the Highwayman fight. Or he's like maybe halfway through it. So yeah, Andy W and Closetowar are maintaining their separate paces.
Yeah, I think Andy W has pulled away just a little bit. That was a darkness on all three characters. It's a little bit unfortunate. So that means the chip damage from Lynx isn't going to be doing too much. So hopefully Closetowar doesn't get unlucky with losing White Knight here. Could gain a little bit of time on Andy W. Yeah, there we go. Skips the rampage. I'm looking at the wrong screen again. I'm sorry. There we go. Skips the rampage.
Yeah, good for him. It's like
That's
20 to 30 seconds. But looks like Superhandi got through the sewers with no problem. And he's gonna fight this giant cockroach. Glad to see it gone.
It's interesting because this cockroach is not very challenging. It has pretty low HP. And then the next 2 fights are just a big step up in health and difficulty from this one. So we've got like kind of a 3-boss gauntlet coming up here. And it's like, okay, this doesn't seem too bad. This cockroach isn't too difficult. And then the next one is like, okay, what? Wait a minute. You followed this cockroach with this guy?
Yeah, the only thing bad about this fight is if Sprig misses a bunch.
Yeah.
Not likely to happen.
That's why a lot of the times, if it's not a dangerous fight, you'll see Sprig doing more 1s than 2s to get the transformation off without risking missing. One of the nice things is that this enemy also doesn't have super high physical defense, so White Knight is going to have some fun if we land a crit. See the 376 there.
And Lynx lends himself to do some extra chip damage, and with super high strength that Superhandi has, it could make the difference between 20, maybe 30 seconds of time saved. But normally this Rochester, this fight is pretty consistent.
Mm-hmm. The Lynx's strength here can actually determine whether or not you even use Harley. If you've got low strength on Lynx, Harley's attack animation is actually quite a bit faster. So if Lynx isn't doing any appreciable damage, you can use Harley instead to regen that stamina when you get a chance. But nice crit there from White Knight at the end. It came near the end, so it didn't save a huge chunk of time, but I think it still saved 1 attack. And we find Fargo in the cell has been captured.
I love Fargo.
I think the implication is that because the pirates kind of tried to stop us and they got attacked by the actual ghost pirates, they wound up being vulnerable when the Dragoons came out of Fort Dragonia. So they finally got captured and put into prison here. But Fargo's like, I owe you one. I'm coming with you. And we try to tell him no. And he's like, nope, I'm helping you. You can't stop me. I'm going to follow you.
Yeah, Fargo comes in with a clutch later on, so we're glad we did let him out of prison.
We finally convince him to go help other people escape, but he will be returning, which is nice because Fargo is a very useful character to have later on.
Yeah, Closetowar is only a few screens away from Miguel, so, and